for America, at least, going
Yes.
into the upper bracket of his group. So fantastic victory for him. Yulsik is knocked into the lower bracket, and we'll face Pavel later on. But we've got our next match coming up, and it's going to be OmegaZero versus SamuelTsao. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is a very, very exciting matchup for me, primarily because we're getting to see OmegaZero, who is a man who comes into this tournament with a lot of hype behind him representing the Chinese region. He is the big hope. When we talked to all the other players, said, how do you feel about the China region? Their responses were, well, I don't know much about them, but I know OmegaZero is a strong player. So now we're going to see him come into play. And there's a very interesting deck here. We see it labeled as Menagerie Rogue from SamuelTsao, which is...
That's what you usually see.
Right, it's kind of that tempo aggro-based rogue archetype that we're used to seeing to some extent, but he's throwing in that extra Menagerie value, working with the curator in there as well. So.
Yeah, so no need to wait any longer. We are ready for this match to start. So for the first player from Taiwan, the newest player to the competitive scene in HCT, it is SamuelTsao. And his opponent from China, with frankly too many achievements to list at this point, it's OmegaZero.
It's go time! OmegaZero versus SamuelTsao.
我的第一轮对手是 OmegaZero。
My first round opponent is OmegaZero. I have watched him play before, and he is a really strong player.
我觉得我的卡
I think the matchup is probably even, because we have very similar decks.
就一半一半吧。
I think the matchup is about 50-50, but OmegaZero has more experience, which might give him an advantage.
To be honest, I think he will be a big challenge for me, because he has great skill.
我应该说
I will do my best to win the championship. I can't make any promises.
OmegaZero versus SamuelTsao. Let's see what you got.
SamuelTsao versus OmegaZero. My name's CJ, joined by That's Admirable to bring you guys this next match. And this one I've been looking forward to. I've sort of been looking forward to OmegaZero's entrance into the Winter Championship here, Admirable.
I have been too. It's been a long time since we've had international play. And by a long time, I mean BlizzCon. But this is the opening year now. We don't have to wait the whole time to get right into the games. He's been one of the most dominant players in the world for quite a while now, and he's facing on a rookie here, SamuelTsao. He said prior to HCT he had never played Conquest.
Yeah, really just ladder finishes. That's what he has to his name as far as accomplishments go. So he's very new, and he's facing up against one of the most experienced players in the tournament. Keep in mind, OmegaZero at the 2016 World Championship lost to Pavel to be eliminated from the tournament, 4-3. Imagine if one of those games had gone differently for him. One single draw could have been the difference of him being knocked out by Pavel and potentially going all the way to be the world champion. He was one of the most hyped players in the field, definitely the most hyped player from China last year. Will he continue those results this year? He is the 2017 Gold Series Finals champion. So that happened just a little bit ago. So he's still probably considered one of the favorites from China. Will he be able to replicate the success that he's had in tournament matches coming into the Winter Championship? Only time will tell. But OmegaZero is sporting a pretty aggressive lineup, Admirable.
Yeah, actually he's oftentimes been criticized for his play in slower matchups where he has to play a much more control-oriented game, isn't focused so much about the intricate early game decisions and more so just about this grand game plan that takes dozens of turns to really get into effect. Here, he's kind of gone back to his roots and played a more aggressive style. A couple of slower builds in here, but you're looking at Dragon Priest, which tops out at Bookworm and Dragonfire Push, and one copy of Holy Nova. You're looking at Miracle Rogue, that's trying to get on board very quickly with Questing Adventurer, Edwin Van Cleef, punish your opponent for not having a response. He does have Jade Shaman. That seems to be one of the standard builds that players are very comfortable with. And then he's got Tempo Mage with Ragnaros and Yogg-Saron in it.
Yeah, it's a little bit, we talked to OmegaZero. We'll get more into that once he gets into the Tempo Mage matchup, why he chose to bring this type. But first game is going to be the Dragon Priest versus the Reno Warlock. Probably not a matchup that OmegaZero was hoping for, because this one is tough. Traditionally, Reno Warlock does have a favorable matchup against Dragon Priest, but as time goes on, players are starting to learn how to play Dragon Priest in certain matchups. As time goes on and Dragon Priest becomes a more driving force in the meta, players are starting to play it more, practice it more, and thus starting to learn the little intricacies that make or break your performance against certain classes. Reno Warlock is one of the ones where you have to play a little bit of a different style. You have to play pretty fast and loose. You have to not respect a lot of cards in order to keep pressure on the board. You have to hope they don't have it. You're playing against a one-up deck.
That's right, and not only are you playing against a one-of deck, but the way that your game plan functions isn't quite the same as it is in normal matchups. Typically with Dragon Priest, you're trying to take advantage of your high health minions early on, get favorable trades, and then be able to make up tons of value with Blackwing Corruptor, with Azure Drake, with Draconid Operative, refill your hand and continue to move your way up the curve. Against Reno Warlock, OmegaZero is fighting a different battle. He's got to kill SamuelTsao as quickly as possible because none of SamuelTsao's minions are really that vulnerable to combat. And then furthermore, he's got lots of ways to handle board pressure, whether it's via AoE spells that'll sweep the entire board or super efficient removal with Blast Crystal Potions and Siphon Souls. He's got the necessary tools to take care of the high health efficient minions that OmegaZero has. So he's got to have these blistering starts where he's able to push him out of the game quickly. Here, it looks like he stumbled a bit.
Yeah, Doomsayer, one of the best possible minions against Dragon Priest because it's effectively Shadow Word Pain or bust when it comes to dealing with that card. Now, some of the success in this tournament, at least, that we've seen from Dragon Priest against Reno Warlock has been against the lists that are very threat light, that are trying to sort of counter very aggressive decks. And even though we say that you have to be aggressive in Dragon Priest, it's not necessarily labeled as an aggressive deck. So this list does run Jiraxis, which we saw yesterday. Dr. Jinkininki played against Dragon Priest as Reno Warlock and was able and didn't take the win because he just ran out of threats.
Yeah,
Jiraxis, if you can get that safely onto a board, you're going to find a hard time losing against Priest because you're just going to continue to develop threats every single turn. So if you have the removal to back it up, which Reno Warlock's not short on removal, then that can just win you the game on the spot. So it's a little bit of a different landscape than what we've seen over today and yesterday. So we'll have to see if that's gonna make an impact. But just keep that in your minds as this game moves forward. That SamuelTsao, as long as Jiraxis is still available, he's not going to run out of threats.
Yeah, this is going to boil down to the mid stages here, where SamuelTsao, he has stopped OmegaZero's early game pressure. But a big facet of this is that he's either got to continue doing that or he needs to find a threat. And his threat can vary in a number of different ways. I'm looking at Kazakus would be fine, Twilight Drake, Second Rate Bruiser, Emperor Thaurissan, Abyssal Enforcer. Any of these would be fine, but so far he's just working with lots of low-cost minions. And look at this is how much attention he's paying to the early game. He says, you know what? I don't even need this power overwhelming to kill you. I don't need to have combo. All I have to do is stop your board pressure, and my deck's natural strength will win over yours. And this is frankly very smart play from SamuelTsao because that's really all he's got to do.
Keep control of the board. Keep his health total high until he's able to find the Reno. Use his wealth of removal to just keep that board as clean as possible. OmegaZero now has got the option between both 5-drops here. How threatening is a 1/1? Do you want to try and dig deeper into your deck? If you don't find a dragon over the next 2 draws, and you need Blackwing Corruptor next turn to remove something on the board, is that a risk you're willing to take? The answer is yes. It does pick up Draconid Operators. That's actually a pretty key pickup.
It is a big one, and I think what kind of is affecting OmegaZero's choice here is Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death. It's really hard for SamuelTsao to have something other than Twilight Drake that's really threatening to his position at this point. He's got removal in case anything hits. So unless SamuelTsao was to draw Twilight Guardian on that turn, there's not really much OmegaZero has to fear. And if he draws Twilight Drake, there's not really much he can do about it. So I like the Azure Drake here. Try to find some more minions you can get in order. Say he draws 2 dragons in a row and one of them happens to be operative. Then he's got a great set of turns in front of him. And he gets to keep the Corruptor to try to maybe get that last little push that he needs. Dragon Priest doesn't have a lot of bursts.
Draconid Operative can pick up bursts. But other than that, Brand Corruptor is about the extent of Dragon Priest's reach. And that's 6 damage.
Yeah, not a ton.
Not a ton. All right, Soulfire.
Well, that is a fairly important one to discard. That means he no longer has access to extra draws from Peddler, and it means he no longer has access to the giant double Kazakus potion. But he's on board. This is where OmegaZero now has those Corruptors to fight back. The fact that he has seen no threat from SamuelTsao, it's got to leave him feeling more comfortable than he generally would.
So a big deal there. OmegaZero holding on to Northshire Cleric. With a 1-1 on board, it may feel like you might want to go for that, but it would leave him pretty vulnerable to both Hellfire and Abyssal Enforcer. You know, he knows that SamuelTsao is still holding onto the coin, so coin Abyssal Enforcer could have been a punish, as well as Hellfire. So he wants to make sure that he gets immediate value out of Northshire Cleric, or play it on a board where he knows that it's going to live the following turn, or has a lot of confidence that if Northshire Cleric were to die, then the rest of his board would be preserved.
Yeah.
Because right now he is running out of resources. Just a Blackwing Corruptor and a Draken Operative aren't going to be able to win in the game.
Dirty Rat is certainly something he could have been considering alongside that as well. If he's got the Northshire Cleric in hand, what that means is it's less likely for SamuelTsao to hit Blackwing Corruptor or to hit his Draconid Operative. Here, Dirty Rat comes out, it's jackpot for OmegaZero.
SamuelTsao is just pretty much sitting here thinking, please don't have Holy Nova. Holy Nova allow him to hit twice into the Dirty Rat, Holy Nova, remove the board, and draw him 2 cards. So that's what SamuelTsao's hoping is not there. OmegaZero doesn't have it, but he can still start drawing cards if he wants. Shadowward Pain, not going to really find a much better target than Dirty Rat. It's probably the highest 3 attack or less minion in the deck. It can sometimes be a dead card in this matchup, especially the later on in the game you go.
Yeah,
this is going to continue building up a board.
This is a really important turn for OmegaZero here as well, because his main goal is to find a way to start pressuring SamuelTsao. And in the face of Reno Jackson, he's actually got some pretty strong board presence. The draws also help him get to another dragon so he can actually get Draconid Operative online. This is such an important turn for OmegaZero, and the buff on the Corruptor here, saving himself from Hellfire Potion. This is a very strong set of plays. Leaves him a little bit weak to Siphon Soul, but pretty much any minion that SamuelTsao is going to Siphon Soul at this point, going to be equal to the next one. It's just going to be something big with 5 power.
Coin Siphon Soul looks like it's going to be the option here. Now, we talked a little bit about SamuelTsao's accomplishments earlier on, and he does have some pretty impressive ladder finishes over the course of the last couple of months in order to qualify for the playoffs. But none of his accomplishments, and frankly, none of anybody's accomplishments in the world matches OmegaZero's on the ladder. He has finished, I believe, rank 1 6 times, if I remember that correctly, on the Chinese servers. Rank 1 legend he's finished, which China, of course, notorious for having the largest player base out of any of the other regions. Finishing rank 1 is incredibly difficult, and he's done it more times than people have done it on any other region, in the toughest region. So, you know, and Conquest kind of sometimes can feel a little bit like ladder in a way, because you don't really know what you're going to be going up against in the next match until it gets later on in the series. So you're having to play every game, at least for the first 4, sort of blind. So SamuelTsao, even the little bit of experience that he does have, doesn't even match OmegaZero's.
Yeah. So far, though, I will say I've been really happy with the way that SamuelTsao has approached the matchup. He's making sure that he's getting in life taps. He's making sure that he's checking the board position so that his life taps won't come back to haunt him in some of these positions. It's been very important for him, and his decisions now are going to start getting tougher because he's got to find a great balance to how he's going to use these tools. I mean, it looks like Hellfire Potion, Mortal Coil is up for grabs at the moment. He doesn't really care about spending the life right now because he's got Reno Jackson in hand. This lets him keep his Twisting Nether for a better opportunity, and at the same time utilizes his health total better. This is a really great play for SamuelTsao.
7 health is a sweet spot too. And also, both Black Corruptors are gone, so wouldn't even make a difference.
No dragon for OmegaZero in the last 5 draws. 6 draws?
It's been a long time.
5 draws. This is not the kind of turn OmegaZero is looking for.
No. And Reno will come out this turn. And not only will that heal SamuelTsao to full, it also presents a pretty problematic threat with a 4/6 being put on the board. Of course, that 4 attack threshold right below Shadow or Death, right above Shadow or Pain. Pretty problematic for Priest to deal with. Any Priest, Dragon Priest, Reno Priest.
This has just been textbook so far.
This feels like how the matchup normally pans out.
Did that Azure play from OmegaZero just come back to haunt him at this point? I mean, that's pretty unlikely that this many draws will happen in a row without a dragon.
He will be able to preserve his board, but SamuelTsao's got the tools that he needs. He's got Twilight Drake, he's got Kazakis. Board gets a little bit too out of control. Twisting Nether.
Yeah, this is tough for OmegaZero at this point. Honestly, I'm trying to think of a way that he wins right now. And I think it's SamuelTsao like having a fairly weak turn, and then OmegaZero maybe like discovering Jiraxis off of Draconid Operative and having time to get that down. But this is not a weak turn. This is a very strong turn.
Picks a 10-mana potion.
I like it. It's one of the first ones we've seen.
Most people go with 5. A lot of times, even in Dragon Priest, you feel like you have to play for tempo just a little bit. Meaning you need to be able to play other things on the same turn that you play the Kazakis potion, or you need to play it early enough to where you don't have the time to wait till 10 mana.
Yeah, you need to be making progress as well as disrupting, which oftentimes a potion in itself will just do that. But sometimes it doesn't, and so that's why you've been seeing players kind of hedge their bets with a 5-cost potion to make sure that they have something to do.
So it's summon an 8/8, deal 8 damage. So it's trading. You're basically taking away a threat and bringing your own threat to the party.
Nice discover for OmegaZero. Kazakis on board is actually not threatening the minions in place, so SamuelTsao going to have to find a way to start handling the board pressure. With Reno gone, the damage starts to matter at this stage. Can you get close enough to dying? With OmegaZero not having any Corruptors left in the deck, that will be tough to find that damage. It will have to come through board presence, kind of the honest way. But SamuelTsao looking like he's got the tools to do it. And I feel like every single time I see an operative card discovered, it's the next draw for the player. It just feels that way. I don't really know how to describe it. You just saw Blast Crystal and then just a draw here. Just weird. It's weird. I just notice it. I can't help it. Cognitive bias. Yeah.
Can't wait a couple years from now in the future of Hearthstone when we can look back on these times and the Hearthstone players that have played since the Reno days can be like, back in my day, we used to have to kill the Warlock twice.
The dragon, so with Shadow or Death in hand, OmegaZero can get a big board swing here, but that's interesting.
Yeah, Emperor Thorsan really doesn't provide much for this hand, especially since he's running out of resources. OmegaZero feels like Faceless Manipulator is going to be a better way for him to present threats onto the board.
He's looking to Faceless a Ragnaros or something big. He just wants to get the right moment for it. And I like the face push here. The damage is going to be so necessary. But SamuelTsao's now got Twisting Nether. This looks like the prime turn for it. Getting 16 or 10 power and 12 health worth of minions. You really can't ask for much more.
He can also set up a minion after it, which can allow him to fight a little bit back on the board if OmegaZero were to have reload. But at this stage, there's not much reload left. I mean, we could see both hands, and we could see that there's definitely not much reload left. But even from SamuelTsao's perspective, he's seen a lot of the big threats that he'd be afraid of post-Twisting Nether. And that is going to be a dragon picked up. So I'll activate Bookworm, Azure Drake. When you're starting to run low on resources, is one of the best cards to pick up. But is it going to be enough? He's still got 15 health to get through. There's a potential for Jiraxis at some point. If Jiraxis comes down on an empty board or even a weak board, then OmegaZero is going to be in some trouble.
I'm honestly thinking that Faceless Manipulator onto Azure Drake is worth a consideration here. Given the fact that he can't really do much alongside of it, well, it's going to be Twilight Guardian now. But given the fact that he can't do anything else alongside Bookworm, you know, killing Mistress of Mixtures is not a priority for him at the moment. Doesn't really mean anything. But maybe that 2/2 sticks around on board and Potion of Madness can give him 2 extra damage. There's just some weird spots where he's going to need to use Potion of Madness, I think, to end up getting there. Because the rest of the cards are not lining up well for him. SamuelTsao just got everything to put the stops on. Just needs more board presence. 3/6 won't be enough.
SamuelTsao has Mountain Giant and Second Ray Bruiser as an option that can block some damage. It does line up quite well against the current board state, since both minions would have to attack into it to get through it. He would have to play it for 5 instead of 3, which is a real bummer, but still good, at least in this situation. He could also try and just prevent some damage if he wants to go for, say, Mountain Giant plus Blast Crystal Potion. But I think just building up a board is going to be maybe enough for him at this stage. Faces Manipulator plus a Potion of Madness clear.
It's an interesting turn.
Might actually...
It presents some problems, but SamuelTsao, once again, he has answers. I mean, we can see that he's got Blast Crystal Potion. So OmegaZero, he's seeing this as an opportunity to maybe get through that 8 points of damage. Start to get the ball rolling here, but he's got to fear Shadow Flame. He's got to fear Blast Crystal Potion. Those are all real threats right now. And SamuelTsao has it yet again. I think this blow is going to be too big of one for OmegaZero to get through at this point. He's just got nothing left.
Yeah, this is effectively the rest of his stuff. Bookworm, not that great to just play on an empty board.
You see it nod his head like, yeah, well, I did everything I could. I agree, he did everything he could.
Sometimes just not enough. We'll see. There's still a little bit of potential for potentially a big swing in the game. Is there a Shadow Word Death left?
Yeah, there's one. Looks like there's one Shadow Word Death left, unless I missed that along the way.
Nether Spite Historian.
Ooh. Well, it's going to be operative here because OmegaZero's got to get something online now. But he may decide that there's not a risk that's worth taking with operative at this point, that he may just have to go for Nefarian and hope SamuelTsao missteps and plays Jiraxxus. And then he hits jackpot.
And to be honest, would that really be a misstep?
I don't...
If Jiraxxus feels good and he goes for it, it's actually not incredibly likely that you get the sacrificial pack from Nefarian.
Well, he could also just take
to kill
Nefarian.
Jiraxxus outright.
He could just use Bookworm this turn as well and follow up with Nefarian. I mean, there's a lot of big spells he can get. The gist of it is that he needs more stats. He needs way more than what he's got. So Nefarian is his choice, not only for the potential Jiraxxus spot, but also because he may just need more cards. There are some very powerful Warlock spells.
Yeah, Draconid Operative is also sort of a resource generator, but Nefarian has more potential for a blowout if you pick up really impactful stuff. Warlock does have some underwhelming spells, to say the least. Priest doesn't usually have much demon synergy, so Demon Fuse, maybe not the best.
I mean, if you want to name bad ones, there's plenty of those.
If you also want to name good ones, though, there's plenty of those, too.
Yeah.
Fellfire Potion, give him some extra reach. Hellfire can give him some extra reach. Soulfire. Power Overwhelming. Forbidden Ritual.
It's not horrible, but...
It's immune to Demon Wrath.
Oh
man.
Gosh.
This game just got real.
Is this going to happen?
I haven't seen it in so long, Admirable. The Nefarian into the Sacrificial Pact. Is it going to happen? It would be immediate gratification because Sacrificial Pact is 0 mana. There's a Nefarian. Oh. I saw the green playable card, and for a minute I was about to scream with delight. Or shriek with delight.
Well, it's still not bad. Like, OmegaZero's got 4 points of damage on board. He's got 3 in hand with Hellfire. If he corruptions the Mountain Giant, it will ensure an attack into his Nefarian. What cards are left that could get him there?
No, nothing. He's used both Blackwing Corruptors.
He's got a Shadow Word Death. He's got a Bran. He's got a Twilight Whelp. And a Dragonfire Potion. Is that what he's got?
And
that's not very much.
He's used his Defender of Argus as well, too. He used it on a single Blackwing Technician to bring it up to a 4/6. This is tough. I mean, the likelihood is that Mountain Giant's going into Nefarian anyway. So he holds on to it, doesn't go for the corruption. He's hoping that how this is going to sequence out, that Mountain Giant's going to hit into Nefarian anyway. Doesn't need to force it. He might need the corruption to take out a different minion, a more impactful minion that isn't already going to trade.
It's going to be hard for him to win. I just don't see the cards that he's got left getting the job done. SamuelTsao got so many options for how to take care of this, and then he can just ride the Drax's hero power to victory. Eventually, it overwhelms OmegaZero.
So there is the opportunity for a full clear here with Hellfire plus a Shadow Bolt. He could have a clean board, push 3 damage, develop a 6/6.
At 5, I mean, this is a risk going down to 5. I mean, this could leave him in a position where Hellfire Potion kills him.
Huh.
OmegaZero's got 2 cards from the Warlock power. SamuelTsao, did he look at this? Did OmegaZero point that corruption in anything? Is he getting a read because OmegaZero thought about it for so long?
We saw from the over-the-shoulder shot, it looked like OmegaZero actually pointed the corruption, like he moused over sort of his own minion, but I don't know if it shows up because corruption reads that you can only put it on an enemy minion. You can mouse over it, though. Maybe that was a bluff.
I think this is a read from SamuelTsao right here, where he knows it's unlikely for OmegaZero to have an actual 5 damage card to get this job done, but at the same time, a 1-cost Warlock spell, unless it's Soulfire, can't kill him in that spot. I think he's reading this as corruption because it took OmegaZero so long.
Yeah.
But now he's down to 2. He can heal himself to 6, but there's 5 damage on board.
Is that... I don't think OmegaZero has a point of damage left. He's 1 damage off lethal, but I don't think he has enough to get there.
He doesn't have that, but he does have a Shadow Word Death left. He's got a Dragonfire Potion left. He's got... Is that Bran?
Bran.
Is that what he needs? But he can push SamuelTsao down to 1. And then SamuelTsao has to answer everything on board, except that he's got Leroy and Faceless Manipulator as his last 2 cards. He's got the damage for it. This was so close. If OmegaZero could kill anything on board from SamuelTsao, he'd live this turn.
2 cards left for SamuelTsao. But he's got enough to win right now. Doesn't look like OmegaZero has a way out. He can heal up to 21.
I must consider.
Even if
there's no way for him to live.
Even if he removed the 3/5 off the board, there'd still be 9 from the Infernal plus the Draxus weapon. And then 12 from hand with Leroy and Faceless Manipulator, which would be 21 damage. So it looks like SamuelTsao is going to take it. It got a lot closer at the end than we were expecting towards the middle of the game. But he's going to throw out his minions. But with only a single card left in the deck, SamuelTsao, Leroy Jenkins, Faceless Manipulator. That's lethal damage.
What a start to this match. So close. All those turns that OmegaZero missed gave SamuelTsao so much time. In the middle stage of that game, if he had drawn a dragon any sooner, that operative could have come out. It could have forced action from SamuelTsao, and maybe OmegaZero could have followed up with damage a little bit heavier. Missing that dragon draw for so long, though, SamuelTsao able to recover despite being at 2 life.
SamTsao did take a risk, though, there. Put himself down to 5 without knowing too much information about the 2 Nefarian cards that were in hand. Granted, there's really no single card besides Fellfire Potion that gets the job done, unless it's a crazy Spreading Madness. He had to read that one of them was 1 mana, so it could have been a 2-card combination, Hellfire, Soulfire, Spreading Madness, Soulfire. You only had to land 1.
I love Spreading Madness.
Yeah. Spreading Madness can get the job done sometimes. But SamuelTsao takes the win. He's going to go up 1-0 in the series. We talked about how little experience SamuelTsao has on the big stage. But let's get to know a little bit more about him.
I'm in the hardest group in the tournament, Group D, and I'm definitely the underdog. The rest of the guys in the group are Green Sheep, Toray, and OmegaZero. All those guys are top players. Will they underestimate me? Will the crowd underestimate me?
SamuelTsao has a better record, but is coming in a bit of the underdog.
I must admit, though, I'm a little nervous because I've never performed in front of a live audience before, so I don't know what that's going to be like. People should stop underestimating me, though. I'm here in the Bahamas for a reason.
And SamuelTsao has booked his ticket to the Bahamas.
Even though my region, APAC, has lots of famous players like Handsome Guy and Chunsu, they didn't advance. I did. And that gives me confidence in myself. I'm so grateful for this opportunity that God has given me. Coming to the Bahamas, competing in this incredible tournament is absolutely the best experience of my life.
Did you see his t-shirt?
Yeah.
Bear on bike.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. I like that t-shirt. I also like SamuelTsao. He's got confidence in himself. He said he deserves to be here. People should respect him. There was a lot of big, big names in the Asia-Pacific playoffs, and he made it through, and they didn't.
It's a true story. In game 1, looked good to me. I liked his read. I liked the way he approached it slowly. I like how he continued to use tools very aggressively to stop OmegaZero's pushes. At the end of the day, that really mattered because he got awfully close to dead a couple times. As we get into game number 2 here, OmegaZero's back on Dragon Priest, and he's facing off against SamuelTsao's Rogue. And this matchup can get a little bit tough for OmegaZero. If he doesn't manage to get on board pretty quick, I think that SamuelTsao is going to have time to establish his setup here because this is not a traditional Rogue. This is very different than what you would expect to see. We're talking, there's the Murloc package in here with Finja. He's got Silent Knights alongside Shadow Sensei to buff stealth minions. He's got a Stranglethorn Tiger. He's got Curator. He's got Shaku. This is not a Miracle Rogue build.
It's not, no. And this build sort of reminds me slightly of a deck that actually took the rank 1 finish in February, which was by a player named Duena, known on ladder and on the ranking list as the Base God. He played sort of a Menagerie Rogue. It did run Curator package and the Murloc package in the deck, and he was able to finish rank 1 with it. It sort of took a lot of people by surprise. It is effectively pretty late in the mean streets of Gaitan meta, and to see something that nobody had really thought of too much take a rank 1 spot in a highly competitive season was a pretty surprising thing. Now, SamuelTsao has added sort of his own twists on that deck with, you know, it's got Stranglethorn Tiger instead of the Jungle Panther, which was in Duena's list. It also has, like you mentioned, the Silent Knight plus Shadow Sensei and still some pirates. It just has a little bit of everything. The only way we could describe it was Menagerie Rogue, which I don't even know if that does it justice because it's just like a crazy toolkit rogue.
Which is really interesting to think about because when your deck relies on having synergy in so many different ways, you can often find yourself running into inconsistencies in those instances. But SamuelTsao he's got confidence coming into this one, but when you're up against a super tough field, there's a lot of justification for bringing a deck that has been performing fairly well, but maybe a little bit inconsistent. It's that way your opponents couldn't target you in nearly the same manner. You know, a lot of people come to a tournament and they expect players to bring Rogue, and as a result will bring a lineup that's fairly strong against it. If this is the Rogue deck he's brought, and he's able to draw his curve, it's a very different kind of deck that they're trying to handle at that point. Your deck won't be built to handle that strong curve. Instead, it'll be built to take advantage of Gadgets and Auctioneer turns. Instead, it'll be built to take advantage of the fact that they can't protect themselves.
So right off the bat, we're sort of seeing maybe a little bit of those inconsistencies. Shadow Sensei, without a stealth minion, is not really that effective.
So many options.
It is a 4/4.
It is a 4/4, but 4/4 against Priest is not bad. But he has Shifting Shades, so that 4-mana spot for now is effectively filled up. So, but he doesn't have, since his deck is quite minion heavy, he has to rely on keeping the board with minions in order to sort of keep the Dragon Priest in check, instead of rely on all the removal spells, the card draw, and sort of cheating out huge minions early on in the game.
I want to talk a little about SamuelTsao last turn, because he ended up using Backstab and just his hero power to wipe out a 2/3 Twilight Whelp. And here now this Netherspite Historian's taking the rest of his board. If he had simply held on to that Backstab, I think a very likely situation would have been for OmegaZero to simply attack one of the 1/1s and then be in this exact situation afterwards, where he plays another Netherspite Historian. The difference would be SamuelTsao would have one 1/1 in play instead of 2 of them. But this turn, it would allow him to play Backstab and SI7 Agent and use his hero power and wipe out that board position. So that SI7 Agent could have been developed this turn and been active trying to attack at this point. Now, instead, it looks like it's going to be stuck in his hand for a bit.
This could be sort of an obscure play around of Push of Madness by trading in the remainder of his board and just keeping a single minion on the board at low, with low attack.
Didn't see it on turn 1 though.
Didn't see it on turn 1. That's true.
That's my concern with that. I think at this point I would have, if I was in SamuelTsao's spot, I just would have assumed it wasn't there. OmegaZero just chose not to use it.
So many options.
Maybe looking to hit a Shaku with that later on.
Shaku would be pretty good.
You know, what does those 1/1s actually mean if you have cheap minions that can take care of it instead?
There's actually quite a few minions in the deck that could be hit by it. Blue-Goat Warriors that aren't buffed, Silent Knights that aren't buffed, Finja. A Finja that doesn't pull anything out, or even if it does pull things out, it comes out of stealth. If it's not buffed by Murloc Warleader, boom, trade it in. Deny Murlocs. It could be sort of another way to remove.
It's just looking for a way to snag tempo once he's in the middle stages of the game. It has nothing left to do with that 6th point of mana, or maybe that 7th point of mana, when he's playing these massive 5-drops. That's when OmegaZero is most vulnerable. It's actually not in the early game versus this deck. It's around the mid stages.
Yeah, that's when the deck starts to really pick up, because that's when you have a little bit more room for the synergies. That's when Finja's going to start to come down. That's when you can start gaining more resources with Curator. That's when your Silent Knight or your Shaku is going to match up with your Shadow Sensei.
Of course, if that happens, Shadow Word or Potion of Madness not
No.
maybe not as good in those spots, but
If there's a Silent Knight that's on the board and Shadow Sensei hits it, that's 2 4/4s, one of them with a Divine Shield against a Priest.
that's usually bad news. I like that OmegaZero is choosing to push here as well. I mean, he recognizes himself that he's got to clock SamuelTsao at some point. That extra 2 damage, that was the difference between winning and losing the game in the last one. There's no reason to hedge his bets here. What's this South Sea deckhand going to do? There's not really much anything in SamuelTsao's deck that can take advantage of the fact that this is left in play. Was going to cold-blood it and hit your 2/3?
Well,
yeah.
SamuelTsao can Shadow Word Pain, Eviscerate, Cold Blood the South Sea deckhand, and hit his face for 6.
I think OmegaZero wouldn't be horribly unhappy with that. Maybe not the best for him, but the big one is getting over the middle stage. As long as he doesn't lose major tempo, I think he's got a great chance to win this one. And I think he's feeling that as well. And that looks exactly like what SamuelTsao's doing. And frankly, I like it. Force OmegaZero to have an answer to this.
He could also SI7 Agent and then trade it in, but 1 damage is actually with an empty board, kind of tough for Priest to deal with. Either he has to expend his entire turn using Holy Nova, or he has to have the second Blackwing Corruptor. There's not really much else that gets the job done.
Yeah, he can just put a taunt in the way, but this guy getting 6 damage and killing the next minion, that's a pretty good use of 2 1-mana cards.
Yeah, Draconid Operative into Backstab. The second Backstab could also be an option. But if you don't hit something that kills it right away, your Draconid Operative dies to a 2-mana minion.
Yeah.
Or 1-mana minion, sorry, 2 attack minion.
And maybe not quite in the way you'd want it to either. Maybe just goes face again. Well, Shadow Sensei's going to come down. He's awfully lonely. No students today, but SamuelTsao's got Curator to follow this up, so a lot of extra gas is going to come online for SamuelTsao. But OmegaZero, again, he's at 20. Looks like he's landing an Operative this turn. He's got to be pretty happy about this. But that Holy Nova being gone means that Curator's going to stand in the way for quite a while.
He would have hit the Backstab.
I'm taking the Backstab.
I like Shaku.
He's got so much value in hand.
He does.
I mean, I like Shaku too, but I like the Backstab more. He's thinking about Curator. Is there any reason to ever Shadow Step Curator? I'm curious about that. Looks like there's only one beast in deck.
It's just the lone Stranglethorn Tiger as the beast, but he does have plenty of Murlocs.
2 Azure Drakes.
And 2 Azure Drakes for the dragon, so it is a possibility. We're going to see Stranglethorn Tiger, Azure Drake, and a Murloc. It's Murloc War Leader.
Stuff. Lots of stuff is hard to beat.
Seems like Arena. It's like in an Arena deck when you draft 1 Stealth Minion, and then you take 6 Shadow Senseis. You're like, look at how much synergy my deck has.
He's drafted pretty well, though. He's got 3 Stealth Minions.
Yeah.
4 Stealth Minions, actually. Forgot about that Silent Knight there.
This would be a pretty good Arena draft.
Yeah, it'd be some good.
If you look at a constructed deck and you say, this wouldn't be a good Arena draft, it's probably not a good constructed deck. OmegaZero starting to get a little bit low on health. He does have a lot of resources to be able to start fighting back on the board.
Now, a big one here is that SamuelTsao does have the freedom to make plays like this. Typically against Rogue, this is an easy way to get punished. But there are no saps in SamuelTsao's Rogue deck. So when OmegaZero is playing this way, he's taken into account the fact that this list has very little to do in terms of affecting a lot of buffs on a single minion.
7 spells this deck has, which is way below the average amount of spells that Rogue usually packs. A single Shadow Step, no preps, no counterfeit coins. It's got Backstab, Cold Blood, Eviscerate, and that's about it. And now it's, I mean, you fall behind on board just a little bit, and your hand is all minions. Now what?
See, that's the thing I'm wondering about this deck, is how well does it actually come back from behind? Because that's one of the things that Rogue is usually the best at, is you get a little bit behind, and then you kill their minions, and you play your own minions, and then you do that again the next turn. And that's often enough time, that's often just enough to end the game. SamuelTsao's just having to fight honestly. He's just got stuff. Stranglethorn Tiger is a way for that to happen, but that's a lot of investment to make to get that done.
It's going to be a Shadow Step SI7 agent. He wants to remove this Twilight Guardian off the board. This removes as much and presents as much power on the board as he possibly can. I was thinking Stranglethorn Tiger to be able to buff with Shadow Sensei next turn, but that left him pretty vulnerable because that would have given OmegaZero pretty much full development and full control of the board himself. And you don't know if 7/7 is even going to be enough the next turn to get through whatever it is that OmegaZero was able to build. Imagine if he had drawn Cabal Talon Priest there and buffed that Twilight Guardian out of range of 7/7 plus a dagger hit. Then he would have been in a ton of trouble. OmegaZero picks up second Draconid Operative here, so he could start digging a little bit more again. He could also play Twilight Guardian Wormrest Agent plus heal if he wants to go a little bit wider on the board, try and protect these minions.
He's got a lot of options, and right now I think his major concern is just keeping SamuelTsao from getting such a wide board that there's an opportunity for him to lose a giant turn in combat. He doesn't want to play all of his taunt minions necessarily, but frankly, I think this is just the best way to get the job done. One of the ways OmegaZero falls out of this game is if SamuelTsao can get through these taunts, and then he lands a Stranglethorn Tiger, and he's able to use that as his damage push, but OmegaZero doesn't have another way to fight against that right now. He's got to use his taunts if he's going to do that. So this game is going to boil down to the way combat works out for SamuelTsao over the next couple turns. If he can get past this pretty clean, I think he's got a great shot at winning.
Swashbuckler potentially a way for him to start fighting back on the board. But it looks like he's going to build as much power as he can.
And why not? At this point, I'd have my sights set at the Guardian, I think.
Could also play for value. He has seen Holy Nova, which is the only Holy Nova. The only other AoE that OmegaZero has is Dragonfire Potion, which would kill off his own Draconid operative.
Well, it's a dragon.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It would kill off nothing.
His Wormrest agent.
It would kill off his Wormrest agent.
At 7-7 is scary for OmegaZero. The fact that he's seen an Eviscerate, I think, is giving him a lot of comfort in this spot, knowing that Leroy Jenkins and something else is about the only way he's actually going to die from this spot. But that's a turn he's got to fade.
That does give him some information that Finja is not in hand. But other than that,
I think he could have assumed that at this point.
He could have assumed it at this point. I mean, Finja is not a lot of power being put on the board, but its power is in its ability to pull out all the Murlocs, or 2 of the Murlocs next turn, and make all of your draws for the rest of the game a little bit better, because you're not drawing a Bluegill Warrior, you're drawing one of your stronger minions.
Lero's going to take the trade and just start healing himself. So this actually pulls him out of range of basically anything SamuelTsao could have for lethal at this point. And with Shadow Word Death, with Cold Blood, and with Azure Drake, I think OmegaZero is in a pretty favored position from here. The Operative is just threatening so much from OmegaZero right now. I mean, SamuelTsao, if he's going to stick something to the board, he's going to have to hope that OmegaZero has no way to deal damage from hand.
He's still pretty healthy at 19.
I mean, does he just keep this Stranglethorn Tiger hidden even?
Ah.
I mean, this is a lot of stealth damage that he's actually putting together here.
But he goes down to 9 at the very least, or at the very most, I guess, next turn.
You know Azure Drakes are getting attacked.
So many options.
There's not really many spells that he could punish you for leaving an Azure Drake on the board.
It's just the buildup of damage is what I'm concerned with for OmegaZero. He's got to fear SamuelTsao having something to deliver those final points. And there's no spells in his deck that really interact with these, so. What on earth? That is really strange. He's trying to set up a dagger hit next turn with SI7 Agent and threaten to push through with the rest of the minions in play. This is really interesting, but this is also pretty dangerous.
I'm all for using health as a resource in Rogue. It's one of the reasons why Rogue hero power is so incredibly strong.
I wonder.
Is because once you develop that dagger, it's sort of an investment. You're investing into that damage and using your health as a resource if you want to use it as sort of removal onto the board. But that is a pretty weird attack.
Yeah, I mean, this is what he's trying to set up for the following turn, is that, with that 3 health. But I don't think this is going to be successful. I mean, OmegaZero's got ways to fight combat on board. He could just heal his own Wormrest Agent if he wanted to. He's almost just given OmegaZero a lot of good plays to make.
And he's going wide on the board. He knows that there's no Fan of Knives in the deck with spell power that's going to be able to punish him. There's only one Eviscerate left. The rest of his deck is pretty much minions, so he's just going to isolate this Stranglethorn Tiger on the board, push a little bit of damage,
This is downhill. SamuelTsao, he's going to have to get something big off of this Swashbuckler. And I don't even know if Priest has that right now.
Holy smite.
Well, it answers the operative, but so does the SI7 agent.
This allows him to take off the Northshire Cleric with SI7 agent plus a dagger hit, which could stop OmegaZero from generating more resources.
I think this was the turn that SamuelTsao could not afford to be weak, and this is weak.
This is a good old-fashioned minion battle.
Just brawling it up.
Everybody's doing fair things.
I like it.
Too soon.
Good old-fashioned minion punching.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what's so interesting about Priest to me, is that it's just such a fair deck. And it's actually pretty good. It's rare to see something like that.
Well, SamuelTsao presenting still some threats. Shadow or Death can answer the Stranglethorn Tiger.
No dragon in hand. That Potion of Madness has been in his hand the entire game. What does SamuelTsao think that is right now?
Dragonfire Potion or Potion of Madness. That's it. Those two things. OmegaZero always looks so calm when he plays in competitive matches. It feels like it's not the case because we've talked to him and we know it's not the case. Sometimes it feels like borderline boredom. He's like, I'm sick of winning all the time.
Me too.
This is another Hearthstone series that I have to win, and I'm sick of it.
Quickly.
But don't let that look fool you. He loves winning.
Well, he looks confused. I think he's trying to piece together what SamuelTsao is trying to do, and it's hard for him to figure out. I mean, how many games does he really have practice versus this? I imagine it's probably just the ones he's done in recent days, since the deck lists have been out. That's the right call, too.
Leroy Jenkins picked up.
7 damage off for SamuelTsao, and he's under threat right now.
There's still a few cards left in his deck that can deal some damage. He's got Murloc Warleader, which means all of a sudden Bluegill Warriors become 4 damage from hand.
Well, that's his Murloc Warleader he's got left.
So if he plays it and it gets killed, then those Bluegill Warriors go down to just 2 damage.
He's got 1 Eviscerate left. He's got a Salcy Deckhand left, and I believe he's got a Cold Blood left. And that's it, in terms of from-hand direct damage.
Now, Silent Knights can be pretty difficult to remove in full if he just goes, pretty wide on board and keeps getting in damage. Maybe he can piece together enough, but he's still on the train of I need to keep this board clean. I need to hope that OmegaZero's Priest runs out of resources before I do, and I stick the last minion.
SamuelTsao looked a little bit nervous there. And that Shadow Word Pain is pretty good. It's not the best draw in OmegaZero's deck, but it looks like enough to get the job done here. So OmegaZero, he can't be worried about Shadow Sensei. Both of those are gone right now. So if he just simply plays to the board very hard here, it's really tough for SamuelTsao to draw the right cards to get out of this. So he even wants to preserve. Oh, he wants to push damage.
Yeah, if he pushes 4 damage this turn, he sets up for a lethal next turn should his minions not be removed. So
this is really smart because with SamuelTsao only having 1 card left, OmegaZero, he's not fearing dying at any step here. And SamuelTsao's turns have been fairly weak. He's not worried about damage or board swing.
This is a really smart play.
Wow, look at that. A horrendously inefficient use of cards that happens to be very good here.
And now SamuelTsao's only way to win is to... No, he's dead.
Yeah.
No, he can tack into one of the whelps.
He can Leroy either the Azure Drake or the Bookworm and then clear off one of the whelps with his Silent Knight.
If he Leroys into the Azure Drake, he doesn't need to clear off both whelps.
fairly unconventional use of Leroy here as well. This has been a weird game.
Yeah. Are there any taunt priest cards? There's Wormrest Agent, there's Twilight Guardian, but both of those need... Oh, Twilight Guardian is neutral, but Wormrest Agent, but that needs a Dragon Activator.
Any class taunts for Priest.
Priest of the Feast could be comboed to heal. Darkshire Alchemist could be used to heal.
Flash Heal.
Flash Heal could be used to heal.
There's quite a few cards you can pick up that are strong in Priest. I mean,
Greater Healing Potion.
once you get to this stage, there's a lot of good Priest cards. It's the problem with it is getting to this stage usually. There's no dragon in OmegaZero's hand.
So he's going to get one card off of Shaku.
Well, I think he plays the Netherspite Historian anyway. I mean, he's pretty all in on this spot here. Pushes forward with Azure Drake. SamuelTsao at 1, Netherspite Historian. Then every single minion for the rest of the game threatens lethal for OmegaZero. But you can tell right now he is nervous about that Shaku. He knows it's going to come down to that. That's not where OmegaZero wants to be. This guy wants to be in control. If it's left up to any potential random effect, that's a disaster for him.
I wonder.
It's kind of weird how OmegaZero views aggressive decks. Wow. He likes aggressive decks because he thinks that they put him in control, which is kind of funny because the name of it is control. That's an Eviscerate.
That's a big one.
Mind
That's
control.
a mind control for SamuelTsao. TJ, Shaku just completely flipped this game around, and OmegaZero now is really in trouble.
And he doesn't pick up a dragon, so Netherspite Historian is not active, and he cannot take 2 more turns from these 2 minions on the board.
And if he'd have played the Netherspite last turn, it would have been inconsequential here. SamuelTsao would have been able to clear off the Netherspite Historian and mind control the Azure Drake anyway. The difference is OmegaZero would be at slightly more health, and SamuelTsao would be at 1. But there'd be nothing left for OmegaZero. There's not a direct damage source left in his deck that can be activated without having a dragon in hand.
And Shaku is going to keep collecting.
Must consider.
I think that's game.
Dragonfire Potion off the top won't even answer the Azure Drake. No Holy Noble left. No really direct answers to minions. Maybe he's going to hope for a dragon picked up next turn, Netherspite Historian into Chill Maw. There's 7 damage on board, a single card plus Eviscerate. If he picks up Bluegill Warrior wouldn't be enough. Can he pick up something off this?
I have no idea what OmegaZero can draw to win from here.
I mean, I think you just go in here, Inner Fire onto Shaku, Eviscerate Edwin.
Maybe 4/4 Edwin's better. I mean, does he perceive OmegaZero as having a Shadow or Death in hand because he's done nothing for 2 turns? Does he think that OmegaZero maybe drew Dragonfire Potion, so he needs to make a 6/6 Edwin?
SamuelTsao is trying to think of what's left.
Is doing nothing better than doing something here?
If he does nothing, he pushes OmegaZero down to just 8 health.
These are questions that are going through SamuelTsao's head right now.
Yeah, maybe just Edwin and not Eviscerate, so that way if there's a minion played, if Netherspite Historian into Chill Maw comes out, he still pushes enough damage through to win the game. But he's just going in. I mean, either way,
Still
I think
enough damage
any way
to win
you
the
slice
game.
it, yeah, I think it's just enough for him. Because he's putting him down to 3 health. OmegaZero needs a miracle, and I think even a miracle won't be enough to get him out of this one. It's an Azure Drake, so Netherspite Historian. Chill Maw doesn't do it. Anything else?
Dragonfire Potion doesn't hit Azure Drake.
Dragonfire Potion doesn't hit Azure Drake, so that doesn't
Now
do
you
it.
don't even have the mana to play it. That's it.
Are there any other dragons?
Well, there's no James Franco dragon, and that's what he needs because it has to do everything. So that's it. He's dead.
Draconid Operative?
I guess he could hit the Murlocs. Wait a minute, if SamuelTsao was at 1, Draconid Operative
Could pick up a Bluga
but
Warrior.
he wouldn't have had the Draconid Operative because he would have played the Nether Spite Historian if he attacked to 1, I believe.
True.
But maybe he's supposed to attack to 1 and not play the Nether Spite Historian.
He's looking for a way out. Backstab
Wow.
is not a way out. And OmegaZero
OmegaZero.
concedes. Nicely done by SamuelTsao. Pulls one sort of out of nowhere. It looked like OmegaZero had that win. Now, there was a lot of things that we can look at in that game for could things have been different. Could things have changed? If OmegaZero had pushed more face damage instead of making more trades, would he have had the damage to finish the game?
If he didn't make those trades, though, would he have gotten punished?
It's, oh man.
These are tough games to look at.
Yeah, that minion combat. But we do have a highlight of the turn where things all changed for SamuelTsao. Shaku the Collector picks up Mind Control and steals the last minion remaining.
You mentioned what a power
For
this
OmegaZero.
card can be, and this was just the absolute best example in this grindy situation. That one steal there flips everything around. OmegaZero's under pressure. Shaku's going to keep threatening value. That's why that card is in the deck, is so it can provide tremendous effect when it goes unchecked. And it's a difficult card to check because it's got stealth when it hits play. The Shadow Sensei Rogue got a win in this set early on. And if I had to look at SamuelTsao's lineup and pick a weak link, I'm picking the Shadow Sensei Rogue.
So now SamuelTsao has Shaman and his own Priest remaining.
His Dragon Priest has got a copy of Ragnaros in it as well. That's a big deal for a couple of OmegaZero's decks.
That is the only difference as far as I can tell is Ragnaros instead of Potion of Madness.
Yeah, there's a couple more tech cards in here as well. I mean, SamuelTsao is only running 1 copy of Azure Drake, and he's got 2 copies of Blackwing Technician.
And then the difference for OmegaZero is a copy of Defender of Argus.
Yeah, so OmegaZero teched for the aggressive builds.
OmegaZero has 1 Northshire Cleric, too.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. But here we go. Shaman for SamuelTsao versus the Dragon Priest once again for OmegaZero. He's just sticking with this deck, trying to find a win. Dragon Priest has actually struggled quite a bit. Coming into day number 2, Dragon Priest was the deck in the field that had the lowest win rate. It was pretty abysmal.
Yeah, a couple of the Priest games were on B787 as well, who was playing Reno Priest.
Yeah.
So I didn't look at the Dragon games specifically. I looked at the overall Priest, which Priest coming into day 2 did have a losing win rate. But a lot of those are the struggled series with B787 on Reno Priest.
That's a good point.
This matchup here is, it can get tough for OmegaZero, but it requires some pretty specific things to happen. And the card really for me to look at is Mana Tide Totem in SamuelTsao's hand. This card, when it goes unchecked, gives him so much card economy to fight against OmegaZero, because all of his damage is seated in, 2 damage and 4 damage here, and then like wide AoE spells. SamuelTsao doesn't do a super effective job at actually fighting OmegaZero's health-efficient minions. And so one of the ways he can fight against that is just by drawing a lot of cards. If Mana Tide Totem gets online and it goes unchecked, OmegaZero just has a tough time with that. It's one of the reasons why Wormrest Agent and the Attacker's Initiative is so important for OmegaZero, because it means he can offset that. Maybe Mana Tide draws 1 card, maybe it draws 2. But it's never going to go crazy if he can check it on board. The nightmare situation is him having an empty board and then seeing Mana Tide Totem. No Shadow Word Pain, no Bookworm, something like that. The rest of the time, though, if OmegaZero can kind of step his way up the curve, that's tough for SamuelTsao. He doesn't have a lot of explosive starts, and his AoE is just not too strong.
This is a Jade-heavy Shaman. It does run, of course, Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem, which we've seen. It went away for a little bit in Shaman.
For some reason?
For some reason, but it's back. It's back. He also runs a copy of Devolve, Sottle's absolute favorite card, and 1 Lightning Storm.
Wow, look at this. SamuelTsao he's just going to play Bran and say, this challenges the Wormrest agent, and it also allows me to get Jade Claws online and start boosting the Jade count. That's a very important facet for SamuelTsao, because if the Jade count isn't boosted and he's moving towards the mid-late stage, they just don't do anything. He needs that extra power and health to fight for the board, or he will lose it and consequently lose the game. So I actually like the risk that SamuelTsao is taking here. Don't wait for the Bran and try to get a perfect turn with it. Offset OmegaZero's tempo. Force him to deal with it. Maybe he doesn't. And it just happens for free.
For free. This play plus attack is a nod for OmegaZero towards the Defender of Argus pickup. Before that, his play was looking like attack into Bran and then heal his Wormrest agent back up to make sure that the Bran would be able to be killed next turn. But now he knows that at 3 mana, it's actually really tough for Sam to remove these minions off the board. And so Defender of Argus, a card that can sometimes be pretty tough to get full value out of, and by full value, I mean hitting on 2 minions.
Yeah, at 3 mana, I believe it's actually impossible for SamuelTsao to completely swing this board. He's got a couple of plays that could take care of what's going on, but it would mean he's not getting the brand value in that instance. So this is probably the strongest setup OmegaZero could have had, and that's information he's definitely taking into account in this spot. So he's going to look to clean the board up over the next couple turns, so that way he can strengthen his board position against Flametongue. But SamuelTsao, he's not going to attack with that Brand, or at least he shouldn't attack with the Brand this turn. That would set OmegaZero up in a much better position to clear this. So still a worry for OmegaZero is that Brand.
Yeah, Devolve would have been probably one of the only cards that could fully punish him. And even then, he'd still have a minion left over on the board.
Yeah, it's not a guaranteed punish, but certainly likely.
Bringing a 2 mana down to a 1 mana and putting a 1/1 on board, guaranteed.
Means he's not getting the Jade Claws.
Means he's not getting Jade Claws. That's true. And now Defender of Argus, even though you're hitting it on 2 minions, your trades aren't the best. You have to effectively send both of these into the Bran. Well, you don't have to, actually. I don't know.
That's the thing. The only other battle cry right now that really makes a difference is would be quite literally second Jade Claws. So I'm curious if he's thinking of delaying this and putting pressure on the rest of the board. Because, again, Flametongue Totem seems like the next culprit. That seems like the spot he's going to be weakest next. But I've seen people leave Bran around, and that oftentimes can be a catastrophe.
I must consider.
Just healing. This is pretty smart, too, but
My shield for Argus.
this ends up being the exact same thing if he Arguses first or afterwards, and since he was running out of time, he wanted that little bit of extra time to go through the motions. It's going to take 2 attacks to kill the Bran, and OmegaZero had clearly set his heart on that.
But this will be a full clear for SamuelTsao with Flametongue Totem. If he so chooses. He could also go with Mana Tide here, be a little bit more mana efficient. And just trade his minions off plus his Jade Claws into 3/2, leaving a Defender of Argus, which would leave his Mana Tide Totem pretty protected outside of Shadow Word Pain, which probably would have come out for the Brand anyway. But how often are you going to be in a spot where you can get value off of Flametongue Totem enough to where it'll be the only thing left on the board?
It's a good question. I mean, SamuelTsao, he's got to think about what's the direction he needs to go to win this game. And right now, it's a card advantage battle and a battle for the board. And if that's the case, Flametongue is looking like his absolute weakest card in terms of the long game plan. He's got to find a way to get Mana Tide Totem set up. So this way, he's looking and hoping that this Jade Lightning will answer a Corruptor or answer an Azure Drake. Draconid Operative, probably the worst one for him in this spot because none of the cards in his hand take care of Draconid Operative in this spot.
Has not found a Hex yet. And maybe that's something to look at when you're thinking of last turn. Do I go with Mana Tide, try and gain some card advantage, force my opponent to deal with this, or give me multiple draws?
Yeah, that would have left his board vulnerable, though. I'm not sure that's a play he could afford to make. However, I do like Blood Mage Mana Tide here. That will give him an opportunity to start setting up some card draw. And at the same time, you know, it puts a decision to OmegaZero. Do I kill the Flametongue? Do I kill the Mana Tide? Do I kill the Blood Mage and prevent spell power from being relevant? The rest of his plays just look too darn weak to me.
Yeah, it presents two of those must-kill threats. You have to make that decision. Do I want to give my opponent cards, or do I want to give my opponent more attack potential on the board by leaving the Flame Tongue Totem there? There's actually been so many decision trees this early on in the game for Sam. It's been pretty crazy.
For both of them, really.
Yeah, for both of them, really. OmegaZeros have been, he hasn't had as many options. But SamuelTsao has had multiple options every single turn, and he goes with the sort of multi-threat play. Most likely one of these minions is going to live on board, but actually that's a Shadow Word Pain picked up. He had Jade Lightning as well, but Shadow Word Pain allows him to clear off both of these high-threat minions while also developing something behind it, which is either the Brand or the Blackwing Technician.
Yeah, the big benefit to the Shadow Word Pain here is that it allows OmegaZero to get some board development. So now he's landing the Technician, 5-6 and 3-5 in play. But the Jades are starting to get big. And that's actually a 6-point Jade Lightning. I forgot that it would be that buff. That's a really big deal right now.
No dragon picked up. All these cards are situational. Bookworm's not going to be able to hit a minion. Dragonfire Potion really isn't slated here because of the fact that it removes his own 3-5. He's got sort of more power on the board anyway. Looking at Jade Lightning plus Brand potentially. As the go-to play.
Once again, no dragons from Mike. He's just got the one. Just hasn't been panning out well for him. He's been losing card advantage. This deck's not typically something that does that. I mean, is this because he has one Northshire Cleric in the deck instead? Just not drawing it as often? Like, it's easy to look at this game and say, yeah, you didn't draw a Northshire Cleric because you got one copy of it. But
one Northshire Cleric, Defender of Argus, and Potion of Madness, which can be cards that get stranded in the hand.
Wow.
He is not playing to the board that much, or he wants to hold on that Brand.
Something smells fishy to me if I'm SamuelTsao, but he's just going to call him out. Slams it. Says, if you want a Dragonfire Potion, you own 3-4, you got it. Job's done. He's got plenty to reload behind this. Jade Spirit's making a 5-5 next.
And he's got stuff to back it up, and he's still got a ton of key draws in his deck. He's got both hexes tucked away in there.
This is exactly what OmegaZero wanted him to do so that he could Shadow Word Death, clean up the board, and keep things rolling.
He's got like one more Jade card left before those Jades start to get out of range of the Dragonfire Potion, is the only thing. And SamuelTsao has to be thinking in his head, if I go for Jade Lightning here, plus a Jade Spirit, I make a 5-5 and a 6-6 Jade. But then he can just trade in and Dragonfire Potion, and all of a sudden, I have a pretty small amount of resources without much reload potential. So that's something to keep in mind. It may seem like that it's a play that stands out, but maybe he tries to find a little bit more of a balance. Maybe he goes for a Totem Up and like a Tunnel Trog, along with that Jade Lightning.
I think it's still just a value battle at this point. I mean, the pressure has not been a thing that either player can apply at this point. And when that's the case, usually it's the last threat that ends up winning the game. Jade Lightning here would give OmegaZero a perfect Dragonfire Potion. That's the last thing that SamuelTsao needs right now. He wants a Jade. He's pacing him one at a time. One at a time. What is this Technician really going to do in this spot is his thought. And the fact that he's slowing it down is keeping a lot of pressure on OmegaZero.
Picks up the single Northshire Cleric. This is actually a pretty good turn. Jinyu Water Speaker is just about the biggest minion in the deck that you're going to be able to use Bookworm on. And then a Northshire Cleric plus heal, you can effectively isolate the 5-5 Jade on the board while you're developing quite a bit of stuff. I mean, cards is exactly what OmegaZero needed in this situation.
True. I mean, that is the one risk to playing it at a paced measure, is that if OmegaZero has some ways to make up that tempo, can he find that value that you were looking for? But SamuelTsao got Lightning Storm in his hand. He's got Maelstrom Portal, and right now he's got spell damage out. Is he trying to set up the same thing against OmegaZero?
Aya Blackball. That's going to be a 6-6 Jade on Battlecry, a 7-7 on Death Rattle. The Jades are already at 8-8. On turn, basically turn 9.
I'm looking at Maelstrom Portal here.
Yeah, I think he you know, Aya Blackball is just a good pickup in general. May not be a good pickup for this turn specifically.
I think it is a good pickup for this turn. I mean, Maelstrom Portal, Jade Spirit, or 2-3 into 1-3, 5-5 over what is then a 3-5.
Today, I don't have to be a princess. Oh.
He's got different plans in mind. Looks like Jade Lightning. He's going to save Aya for afterwards.
This is really smart because now Dragonfire Potion doesn't clear the entire board. It still leaves a 6-6 Jade. So OmegaZero would have to use another resource in order to be able to remove it. He's pacing this game really well. Now OmegaZero has Bran Blackwing Corruptor to take out the 6-6.
OmegaZero starting to look nervous.
He doesn't look nervous very often. A lot of times he doesn't even shift very much in his chair. He kind of just like
focused,
establishes the thinking pose, and then just jams out games, game after game. But he's moving around. I mean, how much of a blow would that be to your morale if you played a deck 4 times in a row and lost all 4 games with it? You'd have very little confidence in that deck moving forward. I mean, I have a lot of little nuggets of information that I want to give about his other decks. And I won't get to if he just loses 4 games in a row with Dragon Priest Admirable.
What to do?
And the viewers at home won't get to hear him.
We worked on everything to say for this for 9 hours straight this morning. It's not true. We did work on it, but he's getting beat so badly right now. SamuelTsao is all the gas. He's got the board. He's not vulnerable to Dragonfire Potion anymore. He's landing Aya Blackball. OmegaZero's run out of cards. He's getting beat bad.
Holy Nova does nothing. It clears a 2-2 off the board and heals him for 2 for 5 mana. Dragonfire Potion still leaves a 7-2, a 6-1, and an 8-8 on board. It puts more power than it takes away. Almost.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it takes 2 power away.
Yeah.
His board clears remove 2 total power from board. He's done.
Bran plus Blackwing Corruptor is what removes the most power. But then he's staring at.
Then he's just staring at just sacrificing those. I mean, just SamuelTsao, he could go right past him. He could just take him if he wants with his remaining minions.
But it's his only way. It's the only way that he can take this much power off the board. But you can tell he is not happy with what he just had to do. More Jades.
Is that every Jade card?
He has 1 Jade Claws left and 1 Chieftain left. And that's it. He's got 13 cards left.
Which is a lot of Jade stuff in the deck. I mean, that will happen sometimes when you have that much Jade stuff. And we got draws from Manatide. We're over 10 turns into this game. It's been a long time, but OmegaZero none of his cards have been catalysts to future plays. They've all just kind of kept him from dying, and that's not good enough. You need to make progress at some point. You just never had an opportunity.
And now it's basically for SamuelTsao, how do I just beat him the quickest.
All right, pick your poison.
How do I really make him feel the Jade Train pain? Either way, he's got more than enough for lethal next turn, and this should be a tap out from OmegaZero. There's no way over this hump. Nether by Historian. Deathwing would be cool, but it's still not playable for another turn. And there it is, the concede. SamuelTsao takes a 3-0 lead in the series.
Point.
He is one game away from sweeping what some players called the favorite coming into the Winter Championship, at least the favorite from China.
We haven't seen a sweep all tournament long so far, I don't think.
I don't think so. And to come from such a huge underdog as SamuelTsao, one of the players that not only people at home, but even us, we know very little about. We know sort of his ladder finishes. We know a little bit about his background in Hearthstone, but not too much. But this series could be coming to a close very soon. But we have plenty more action coming at you guys. So stay tuned.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome to the Bahamas as the Hearthstone Winter Championship continues. Green Sheep versus Tare.
There's Green Sheep himself waiting for his next match. That'll be coming up after the SamuelTsao versus OmegaZero series. A lot riding on this, not only for these players, but also for regional pride. We saw with Pavel's loss earlier that it's impossible to have 4 European players in the World Championship qualifying from Winter, which is a good thing for me and you, Admirable, because we have to listen to Subtle and Raven backstage all day long.
Yeah. They just constantly brag about it. Rightfully so, I would too.
Yeah.
Green Sheep and Tare, that's 2 former BlizzCon competitors.
Yeah. Tare he's been around the block a few times. Not only did he compete at the World Championship, but he was also was the runner-up in the America's Summer Championship last year. One step away from another World Championship for him. So he's definitely had a storied career. But getting back into this one, SamuelTsao is a game away from moving on to the winners match of Group D, the Group of Doom, as Frodan called it.
Yep. And it's a Dragon Priest mirror match first up. And this one can get a little bit ugly at times. And what I mean by that is typically the first player to take strong control of the board will end up winning the game. There's a couple different ways to do that, but it starts out with the early curve. For OmegaZero, not too much on that end, but that is a 1-2-3 for SamuelTsao. If he draws a dragon here, this is going to look great, but if he doesn't draw a dragon, his opening is very weak in this state.
OmegaZero, on the other hand, he does have Wormrest Agent plus a coin already. And picks up Cabal Talon Priest, so his early curve, it may not be explosive, but it is reasonable.
Well, start. It's not the strongest curve, but Technician is certainly one of the big ones. And the discoveries that pan out from here also make a big difference. If one player isn't able to establish that stranglehold on the board, Draconid Operatives oftentimes start to break that standstill. There's so many ways to get extra Draconid Operative. Netherspike Historian, Draconid Operative, and discover one of those from your opponent's deck. I think that's a big factor to why OmegaZero kept Draconid Operative in his opening hand. Number one, to reduce the likelihood that SamuelTsao is discovering, and then number two, just because it's such a powerful card in this mirror match.
The Dragon Priest mirror is so weird. Because you're just watching minions trade back and forth on the board and them getting healed back up.
That's what almost every one of these games has been so far, though. Just a big minion battle the entire time.
Yeah, there was a tournament, you know, just a couple weeks ago, the major at PAX East, where there was a lot of Dragon Priest being represented. So there was a lot of Dragon Priest mirrors. And I remember one Dragon Priest mirror specifically where 13 Draconid Operatives were played in that game.
That's a lot of...
13 Draconid Operatives, Admirable.
That's a lot of operations being run by Draconids.
It was like a 35-minute game.
Of good old-fashioned minion battles.
Of good old-fashioned minion battles. Draconid Operative, don't mind if I do. I wonder what this Draconid Operative is going to give me.
Oh, looky.
A Draconid Operative.
Yeah, foregoing the attack here, doesn't want to leave any of his board vulnerable to what's in play. Interesting that SamuelTsao took Midnight Drake from that Netherspite Historian. You +1 attack for each card in your hand. 4 health. It starts as a base 1/4. It's kind of a weird card, but honestly, it's looking pretty good here.
It's the less successful brother of Twilight Drake.
OmegaZero, meanwhile, he's putting SamuelTsao to a decision right now. Would he rather draw a card or would he rather get board development? And given that SamuelTsao had so many dragons in hand and now that he's picked up Operative, I'm going to guess that the idea of saving this Northshire Cleric is probably by the wayside at this stage. It would be really tough for him to justify not playing a 5/4 and instead drawing a card here.
It can be a little bit tough to come back from behind, and he must have picked that Midnight Drake with a plan in mind, knowing that he had a Northshire Cleric on board and that he wanted to play a Dragon on 4. His other options were Deathwing and Twilight Whelp in that selection. So he is going to go along with sort of that game plan. That pick sort of indicated that.
Can't get through the Worm Rest this turn, though. How quickly is OmegaZero going to try to fight for board, or is he going to try to start drawing immediately?
What's that saying? If you can't go over it, you can't go under it, and you can't go around it.
Go home? I don't know. I've never heard this before.
It's either go home or go through it. One of the two.
Go through it sounds right. Now that I think about it, go through it sounds about right. I could be wrong, though.
I hope SamuelTsao understands my meaning a little bit more than your meaning.
I understand your meaning, but I understand my meaning.
And by go through it, I mean the taunt, the Worm Rest agent.
I must consider.
That was supposed to make it easier to understand.
I somehow made it tougher. Oh, geez. It's a really tough turn for OmegaZero. If he just takes the trades that are on board, he kind of ends up in a weird spot where the Midnight Drake runs over the Worm Rest agent, and then the Blackwing Technician will finish off the Cabal Talon Priest. So in this spot, he's choosing to risk Bran to try to get some immediate value from the battle cries, take his pickups while he can, and then put SamuelTsao to a tough spot where he's got to have something to swing this board position back around if he's going to answer Bran. And if he doesn't answer Bran, that is really bad news for him. Not only that, but if OmegaZero's Bran gets answered, it means that SamuelTsao did something other than play his own Draconid Operative. This is both denying SamuelTsao the ability to get that huge body on board, get that extra information right away, and also has some payoff potential.
Yeah, going into a turn 5 play, you a lot of times can't afford to leave Bran up, and he does have a way to kill it with the Blackwing Corruptor, but it's exactly as you mentioned. Now, he would have a strong board himself. He'd have the 5/4 Blackwing Corruptor, he'd have a 5/2 Midnight Drake, and he'd also have the 3/3 Technician. So OmegaZero had to have that as a possibility in his mind when he made that play. He's more so trying to deny the Draconid Operative, understanding that he doesn't have a way to deal with it. But I really don't think that you can leave Bran up going into such a crucial turn.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you as well. I think if he leaves Bran up, he's going to be in a heap of trouble. Corruptor's looking pretty good. He just saw Corruptor from SamuelTsao. He can isolate the board down to that 3/5 versus the 5/4. This is exactly what OmegaZero had in mind.
And he does have the resources to play a little bit of a longer value game. He's got a lot of big stuff. He was able to pick up Azure Drake plus Alexstrasza from the Netherspite Historian with the Bran, getting immediate value out of the brand and forcing SamuelTsao to play a turn that was weaker than something that he probably wanted to.
To operative or not to operative?
Twilight Guardian looks like he's mousing over. It would allow him to heal up the Blackwing Technician, but I feel like putting this power on the board is really important. OmegaZero has both Dragon and Operatives in his hand already, so he can't steal one.
Now, he can't get Nether Spite Historian and then just chain Operatives that way.
True.
Which, that's what I'm looking at. There's definitely a lot of value to Bookworm, though. He doesn't have a Shadow Word Pain effect in hand at the moment, and if OmegaZero has Twilight Guardian to back this up, it means that 5-1 can just continue to push through at that point. Maybe makes another big trade. SamuelTsao is going to take the tempo. That means OmegaZero starts the Operatives. That's another brand available for OmegaZero.
This also gives OmegaZero some information, not only that Brand isn't in hand, but also that there's a Twilight Guardian that's less likely for SamuelTsao to have. So it's something that he can keep in his mind as, well, if I'm looking at what my opponent is likely to have going into the next turn, I can sort of check those off as being a less percentage chance to really punish me.
Look at the board right now. What does SamuelTsao do? Does he trade? Is he going to go face?
Dragonfire Potion to do 1 damage?
He's got to worry about Defender of Argus. That's a big card right now. If he doesn't choose to trade, he would get punished heavily by Defender of Argus. But a lot of the cards in OmegaZero's hand have been created by other effects.
Must consider.
3 out of the 7. 2 have come from Nether Spite Historian. 1 was a Draconid Operative that was taken from SamuelTsao's own deck. And OmegaZero's got to be feeling pretty comfortable because he has the board lead. He also has double Shadow Word Pain, which hits a lot of minions in Dragon Priest. Twilight Guardian included, Blackwing Technician included, Twilight Whelp, Cabal Talon Priest, Brand.
Wow.
And he just passes over.
That's going to be a clean board. And OmegaZero, I believe, is going to hang on to the Operative in this spot and instead go with Azure Drake. I think it's going to be strong enough on board in combination with what he's got, and he really wants to land Brand Operative. That is his major goal right now, is to land that combination. So the turn is just set up perfectly for him to dismantle this. He's going to go through all the options in his head and see if there's anything else in play here, but he can continue to fight for board also because he's got Alexstrasza to deliver that big burst damage. So another goal of OmegaZero is to simply to get 15 damage on board at one time, play Alexstrasza, and finish the game in one single blow.
It also gives him more incentive to just play through the board and not have to worry about playing a little bit aggressive, and that's exactly what he's going to do. I like the nod towards Brand plus Draconid Operative. When you can take 2 cards from a deck that's very, very similar to your own, it becomes draw 2 cards from your deck that you get to pick from 3.
Yeah.
Almost. SamuelTsao doesn't really look stressed. He sort of looked the same throughout the entire series.
He's not been the one under pressure so far.
Yeah.
He's the one up 3 games.
It's like, even if I lose this one, I'm still pretty favored.
3 more chances.
Yeah.
And it's looking to me like this game is starting to go downhill. OmegaZero has established that full control, and SamuelTsao doesn't really have any ways to swing this back. He can kind of answer back, but OmegaZero's cards have already gotten so much value that this is likely to be a futile effort. I don't think SamuelTsao's really getting back into this one in an effective way. Once again, just yielding the board over to OmegaZero. Look how quick this turn was.
I mean, this was his plan all along. Nether Spite Historian.
How about another?
Just take another one. There it is.
This matchup is all about value. And OmegaZero's got all of it.
He may run out of room in his hand.
He's paying dividends right now. He's not paying transaction fees on his mutual funds.
Nope.
Very diversified portfolio.
It's just going to continue to grow. Bran is the best financial advisor on the block.
That's true. However, that doesn't mean an early retirement for OmegaZero. Again, he's got 3 more games after this one. He is down 3 games to 0. So this is just step number 1 for him.
Shadowed Pain on a 3-9 feels really good. And the one thing about Dragon Priest Mirrors is that even when you take the lead, it does take you a while to close out the game. But
it's kind of a fun close, though. You just kill all their stuff.
You kill all their stuff and you generate a bunch of other stuff. Alexstrasza might speed things up a bit, but he can know pretty confidently that SamuelTsao doesn't really have a way back into this game. Dragonfire Potion is the only big AoE spell that he has. The only thing that he needs to worry about is Netherspite Historian into Deathwing.
And he's already got a check for that.
And he's got a Shadow Word Death. Yeah. And basically, OmegaZero's only objective at this point is to not spend Shadow Word Death if he doesn't have to.
Yeah. And since he's got Defender of Argus, he's not going to have to. So that's even a bigger benefit for him.
Dragonite Operative number 5.
Keeping tally marks over there, or are you just writing down the number every time? Tally
Keep
marks.
it tally marks.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of tally marks. Take your pick.
Defender of Argus allows him to answer this Dragonite Operative. Also the Blackwing Technician. Those are a couple of clean trades. And again, not vulnerable to Dragonfire Potion. In that instance, he might have to be worried a little bit about Holy Nova, because there is 1 copy in SamuelTsao's deck. So he's got to try his best to preserve as much of his board as possible.
Must consider.
There's just so much to do. Like he's got so many roads to victory from this spot. It's like it's hard to decide when he sees all of them, and now he's just trying to figure out which one's better. It's like when you're at the grocery store and there's too many different kinds of peanut butter. I can never choose when there's that many kinds of peanut butter.
Peanut butter's 50-50, as Amaz would say. So the right kind of peanut butter or the wrong kind of peanut butter.
Crunchy or smooth? Are you a crunchy or smooth peanut butter guy?
I don't know if I want to disclose that information. I'm going to keep that to myself.
Sounds like what a Dragonite Operative would say.
Yes, it is.
Those don't help.
There's Shadow Word Death, which, I mean, it's something.
It's something.
What else can he really hope for at this point?
This just has to be an awful lot of whiffs from OmegaZero to lose this game.
A lot of times at this stage, we'd say, oh, he's just searching for information. But the deck lists are revealed, so he knows what's coming. At this point, he may just be trying to think of something that he can do for the upcoming series. Or he just hopes that OmegaZero's hand is a bunch of dead cards. But with 8 of them, you'd be hard-pressed to find a combination of 8 cards that isn't going to beat you.
Is he thinking about going the offensive here?
He's got 10 damage on board, so if he plays Alexstrasza, he can push down to 5.
I must consider.
He just saw Shadow Word Death, too.
That's 2 Shadow Word Deaths being played now.
He's going to play his own Shadow Word Death instead. I mean, even in the face of Deathwing, he's got a lot to fight back. He probably could just win the game in the face of Deathwing, because Alexstrasza would be a colossal threat at that point. He could follow up the damage. It would take 3 hits from Death's Wing to kill him at this point. Even in the most catastrophic situation possible for OmegaZero, I think he just still wins. So the Shadow Word Death is intended to just close this game in the next turn or so. This is 14 damage out. If SamuelTsao does not have both taunts on board, he loses instantaneously. If he doesn't kill a minion on board, he loses instantaneously. Any route he takes is going to lead to that eventual position because of the dominant position OmegaZero established.
I wonder.
This is about as good as Dragonfire Potion's ever going to get. Sam is just going through the motions. He has 3 Netherspite Historians in his hand at the moment.
Once upon a time.
Look at there. Number 6.
This is just an embarrassment of riches.
When you're playing on this big of a stage for this much money, there's no such thing.
I'm a liar. Told you something was there, it doesn't exist.
I wield the power.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But now again, OmegaZero has set up a board where Alexstrasza will be a kill next turn. So if he doesn't clear off 2 of these low health minions, if he doesn't take at least 2 power off the board,
OmegaZero, he's choosing not to draw here because of the card count. You know, if something crazy happens and SamuelTsao is able to get control of the board again, that card count in the deck could end up mattering. And so since OmegaZero has so much stuff already, the extra card would not only get him closer to fatigue, but it would also take up space in his hand, which puts a little bit more pressure there. So choosing to not draw the card here is definitely a priority for him, I'd say. That's not what that wants to hit. And that looks like enough. 10, 14, 15, 16, 17.
With Potion of Madness to get the taunt out of the way, that is going to be enough. And OmegaZero, long time coming. That was a pretty grindy series despite OmegaZero having a lead for most of it. But he's going to put himself on the board, take a win, bring the series to 3-1.
Still a long way to go, though.
Yeah.
A lot of play. Rogue, Shaman, Mage left for OmegaZero. Oftentimes, Dragon Priest is thought to be pretty darn strong versus Mage, but he hasn't brought Reno Mage. He's brought Tempo Mage, a deck that in this format, he was one of the first players to really introduce into competitive play. He played it at a team event. I don't actually remember if it was versus NA or versus EU at one of the China versus EU or NA events. And since then, players started to pick that up as a very serious competitive deck. He was putting up great numbers with it, and it started to spread afterwards. Now that we've seen the changes to Small-Time Buccaneer and Spirit Claws, I think it's one of the better aggressive decks you can have.
Yeah, OmegaZero, I mean, we've talked about it before. He's got like an 80% win rate in competitive matches over the past couple months since his run at BlizzCon. But that's not enough for him. He's a guy that really wants to take this championship. So take a look.
I am one of the best players in China, and with some decks, I am the best. There's a lot of pressure being the top player, but pressure is good too, because pressure motivates me. When I try my hardest to win the championship, I'm very difficult to beat.
It's going to be Pavel versus OmegaZero.
Before last year's match against Pavel, I never thought that I could lose, but the game can change very fast.
OmegaZero 3-0.
This guy's doing it. He's doing it. The aggression, it's working out for him.
The 4th game was against Cthulhu Warrior. I didn't draw great cards and I lost the game.
OmegaZero did him a well played before Jorg, and he meant it. Wow, look at that. That is enough for Pavel to win this game. For me, that Spellbender was too much, and
there's nothing OmegaZero can do at this point.
Yeah, it's not going to be enough, and a reverse sweep for Pavel. What a series.
Yeah.
I played my best. I rewatched the match. I couldn't have played any better. I want to be the world champion, so I'll work as hard as I can until I achieve that goal.
It's hard to believe that he was one of the victims. He was one of the favorites going into the World Championship, and he was one of the victims to the reverse sweep of Pavel. One game, there was a couple points in that series, I remember watching it, where like a single point of damage could have changed the entire landscape. Would OmegaZero have been the world champion had he took that series against Pavel in an alternate timeline? It's
very possible.
It's crazy to think about those types of possibilities. And now coming into the Winter Championship, again, 2017 Gold Series Finals champion. Well respected among his peers here, the other Chinese players. And he's one of the only recognizable names in the West from China because of his success. Dude's got a crazy amount of accomplishments. If he loses the first series against SamuelTsao, a guy who nobody had ever heard of before the HCT Asia Pacific playoffs, be a big blow to him.
Wouldn't be out of the tournament, but that's certainly not the position he envisioned himself in.
No.
You heard him say it, all that hard work, all that time spent. He's expecting to win championships. Game number 5, OmegaZero is going to be on a mid-range Shaman deck, and SamuelTsao is going to be back on Dragon Priest for the rest of this set. If you look at the Shaman decks that they've brought, they are very similar to each other. The Tecton copy of Devolve, the split on the AoE spells, 2 Maelstrom Portal, 1 Lightning Storm. The giant Jade package that works its way up the curve. The major difference that I'm seeing is that SamuelTsao is playing a copy of Bloodlust. OmegaZero in that spot has got a second Azure Drake instead. He's also got 1 copy of Lightning Bolt in his deck. Just that little bit of extra reach to see if he can get to the right spot.
No Jinyu Water Speakers is pretty much the difference there.
And that card is bad in this matchup.
Big minion for Shadow Word Pain. Big minion for Bookworm. Yeah, it doesn't match up quite well, and a lot of times you don't need so much to heal. You need to just keep developing your Jades and pushing the board forward. And OmegaZero starting to play a little bit quicker. You can tell he's picking up the pace. That last game, he was playing it very slow, meticulously, trying to make sure that he put himself on the board and gave him a little bit of momentum.
This is a tough spot.
Yeah, if he Shadow Word Deaths, he develops nothing else, but he preserves his Northshire Cleric on the board. But now he's giving an opening to OmegaZero to have initiative on the board. Azure Drake picked up. I like the Azure Drake here because Think From Below can continue to get cheaper and he can make a really big board swing with Think From Below later on with, you know, Removal Spell and then Think From Below.
I like it a lot too, but something to consider for OmegaZero is how effective Dragonfire Potion is going to be against him at some point in this game. This is definitely a turn where Dragonfire Potion is not effective, and he just saw a Shadow Word Death.
Good point.
In that event, Azure Drake is going to provide him a much better spot for utility later on. Not only that, but it can couple with the spell damage that he has available in his deck. So if that's the case, I would expect to see a hero power here, and then the the Thing From Below afterwards to continue to threaten this Northshire Cleric, because right now, SamuelTsao spent the turns just answering what OmegaZero's had. So once again, can you answer this? If not, I'm going to start taking back a little bit of that advantage. But this is right into the turns where Draken Operatives start coming easily into play for SamuelTsao. I like the Thing From Below.
Yeah. Blackwing Corruptor would have also been able to answer the Azure Drake with the Northshire Cleric on board. SamuelTsao options Jade Spirit, Manatide Totem, Totem Golem. Jade Spirit really doesn't have any synergy with his deck. So it's between the Totem Golem and the Manatide Totem. Does he feel like he needs card advantage, or does he feel like he needs a cheap but effective minion to put onto the board?
It's a really interesting spot here because SamuelTsao does have quite a few ways to generate that card advantage, but doesn't have a ton of ways to get stats on board quickly if that's what he needs. So this is a decision he's having to make right now for a turn that doesn't matter till way down the road. It's a lot of stuff to think about, and frankly, I just don't think he's got the time to think about it.
This is actually a pretty tough turn for OmegaZero. Jade Lightning doesn't quite reach the Draconid Operative at that 6 health mark. Doesn't have anything else to sort of sweep it up. Devolve on this board may not necessarily be the best.
Yeah, typically that he wants to use Devolve when he's seen either SamuelTsao get a lot of minions on board that are very health efficient, or once he's invested some buff cards into the board. So say Talon Priest and Power Word Shield had been put on this Draconid Operative. That's a much better time for Devolve because you're pulling some other effects that SamuelTsao maybe yet to utilize at that point. Here, the Devolve would simply just be a downgrade on the power and health there. And may not even be that. I mean, Draconid Operative can turn into a Flavor Faceless. So there's even some punishes available in the Devolve here. I think he's got to play for the board harder.
Oh, how convenient. Tunnel Trog. 1 mana minion to fill up the rest of that 1 mana. So Sam now going to have to deal with an Azure Drake plus a Tunnel Trog on the board as well.
These are some strong looking turns for SamTsao though. His hand is gas.
So Totem Golem is pretty interesting here. So looking at the play right off the bat, a trade into the thing from below. Sort of necessary.
How does he want to trade anything from below that? I mean, Dragonfire Potion's not looking too bad here. It rolls right into an OmegaZero's turn where Jade Chieftain gets online. So there is a lot of consideration against it because of that, but
I feel like Dragonfire Potion is going to have a lot of use.
I agree.
The Jades are small, and they're going to get big. If he goes with Dragonfire Potion here, it's just because he wants to have an entirely clean board going into his next turn because he feels like he has the resource advantage.
We saw the game between OmegaZero and SamuelTsao, though, where the roles were reversed, and OmegaZero never had an opportunity to use Dragonfire Potion. Here, SamuelTsao has an opportunity to use it, and he's just going to take it. And frankly, I think that's fine. Even if he sees Jade Chieftain, the Jades aren't large enough to be an impact at that point, so he would have Bookworm plus the trade into the Operative to take care of the Chieftain. He hedged his bets a lot of different ways, and OmegaZero at this point just hoping that there's no answer to this Mana Tide Totem, but SamuelTsao has got plenty of them.
Blackwing Corruptor plus one of these 2-drops seems to be the most mana efficient and present the most power on the board. Looking at Bookworm, Bookworm doesn't have too many great targets in OmegaZero's deck. There's no Thunderbolt Valiant or Genie Water Speaker. It can hit Totem Golems. It can hit some of the Jades that are going to be coming up soon. Blackwing Corruptor can be coupled with Brand, while Bookworm can't. Well, it can, but killing the same minion twice, not quite as effective. So Bookworm, I feel like, is less flexible, while Blackwing Corruptor is going to be able to come down no matter what.
Here's that Totem Golem coming into play. Maybe not, though. SamuelTsao hesitates just a second.
I like the Totem Golem. Next turn, he can still play 5-drop, 2-drop. Even if he's overloaded for 1. And that's pretty much just what he needs to keep in mind, and he does. So this game is going to start to get a little bit interesting. OmegaZero is trying to get those Jades online while keeping the board in check. SamuelTsao is just trying to overwhelm OmegaZero to a point where he doesn't have that kind of time. And Jade Chieftain is really the only option.
And it's just not very good. I mean, also in the same game where the roles were reversed, we saw SamuelTsao able to ramp up his Jades very quickly at the start of the game. OmegaZero, it's turn 8, and he just made his second Jade Golem. The minions that SamuelTsao has are just going to chew through this, and not really much consequence along the way. OmegaZero is going to have to find a big turn to swing things back around because he is going to be losing the board. He's got Blood Mage, he's got Maelstrom Portal, he's got Devolve, he's got maybe even Brand Chieftain if he's able to wait that long. But SamuelTsao, in the meantime, this is consistent with the way that he's played all series long. Use resources aggressively to clear the board. And here, he even gets a refund.
Yeah, this is a really strong play. Gonna be able to draw 2 cards, 3 with the Power Word Shield, and protect his board while removing his opponents. And OmegaZero, we saw in his interview earlier, he remembers that match against Pavel very clearly, the match that knocked him out of the World Championship. He said he went back and watched the games and that he couldn't have done much different and that he played well. But that still stings. When you go up 3-0 in a series and you fall. So he knows that it's possible. So he's thinking in his mind, I'm going to try and get every ounce out of these cards because I've seen people reverse sweep before on a big stage like this, and I know that I can do it.
Yeah, and this is a big turn to start it. Dragonfire Potion used, Holy Nova used. That's all of the AoE from SamuelTsao. It's back to an honest fight. And if OmegaZero loses this turn in combat to SamuelTsao, he's got Blood Mage and Maelstrom Portal to follow this up. This is looking like it could be the start of the turnaround. OmegaZero's got a lot of strong turns coming up, but SamuelTsao's not going to run out of cards. That's really the big issue for me, is the Nether Spites are there, the Blackwing Corruptor, the Northshire on board, the Ragnaros in hand. Are the Jades big enough to keep SamuelTsao from fighting this? They might be, because this is just looking like SamuelTsao has got a lot of taunt stuff in terms of efficiency. The rest of it is fairly weak to the board.
OmegaZero, one card to mention is Devolve as well, which can sort of reduce the amount of power on board in order to make Blood Mage Stalnos plus Maelstrom Portal just a little bit better. And SamuelTsao's going to just try and build up a decent amount of power on board. Insta-picks Nefarian. Didn't have much time to think about that one, but Nefarian, usually a good choice because it's just another value generator.
Whoa. Flame Tongue for OmegaZero as well. I think he's eyeing hero power this turn. He's got a 25% chance to just hit jackpot.
What to do?
But, I mean, they're just 1/3s that are on the board. How big of a deal is that? Everything he leaves around is eventually going to get some more value. Like, Northshire Cleric's a scary one to leave around because of the card draw. But it's also pretty bad to leave around 3/5s, just kill everything.
Devolve comes out. Not a Sea Witch.
Well,
and Tomb Pillager.
That is a little bit weird.
Those are actually pretty well-statted minions for their cost. I mean, Blackwing Corruptor effectively turned into a better version of itself with Tomb Pillager.
And the Bookworm moved up in power.
And the Bookworm moved up in power. Okay, it looks like OmegaZero is not really going to respect these 1/1s and just try and build up a big board now. I mean, he's got a lot of control now.
Well, suddenly Ragnaros looks a lot better.
Yeah, 3 good targets. Some people might say 4.
My hand's raised.
I see that. It's still raised.
I wield the power.
But it looks like he's saving the Ragnaros for a rainier day.
I mean, if he can set up a stronger position, why not? This allows him to utilize Shadow Word Death on the largest minion on board, trade in the 1/1s, which aren't currently doing anything, strengthens him against Maelstrom Portal a bit, and now threatens SamuelTsao's last remaining minion.
Yeah, this
with 7 cards left in his hand.
SamuelTsao does look like he is taking pretty heavy control over the remainder of this game, unless OmegaZero's draws are the best in his deck for the next couple turns. He just needs to keep piling Jades on. And that's really his only way to win. He's got a lot of sort of dead draws in the deck. Maybe not dead, but definitely not impactful enough to give him a chance. I mean, I think Blood Mage is going to have to come down on the board.
I think he's got Blood Mage, Portal, and Jade Claws. I think this is the hope he's got. At this stage, he's just lost. He's lost the value battle.
Yeah.
The only way he's going to get that back is if he can find turns that are strong in combat. The Flame Tongue is the last remaining tool, plus the 7/7. I mean, there's no scoffing at that. And he's got a wide enough board position that Ragnaros isn't strong against him. He's got to take out the Blackwing Corruptor, so that way lesser heal from SamuelTsao, just his hero powered, isn't buying a ton of value. Is this now enough on board for OmegaZero to find some ways to get back into this? He's not quite done yet.
Yeah, he doesn't have Bloodlust. He does have a few Jade cards left in the deck. Once they get above that 8/8 point, then Rag all of a sudden doesn't become a threat to those big minions. He's going to find have to find a little bit of a better way to deal with it. OmegaZero still has hexes left, which means that if SamuelTsao were to play just one big minion that wasn't, if Rag was played and doesn't connect, if Nefarian is played, doesn't pick up something good.
Well, the big benefit SamuelTsao has right now is that he's still at 30, so he does have some time to figure out how his plan's going to work and maybe mold it along the way. But
and there's no Bloodlust from OmegaZero.
Wow. Is that good enough, though? I mean, that still leaves the 7/7 on board. I guess one of the big threats for SamuelTsao right now is just simply the fact that the board state is wide. I mean, Flametongue Totem is going to knock out pretty much any threat he plays. The Chill Maw, however, will eliminate the Flametongue Totem in the process, as well as all the other small minions on board. So if that's the case, that would mean that OmegaZero has to fight through it with his bigger minions instead, or sacrifice his Flametongue Totem.
Ragnaros.
Since Ragnaros, and this is where Ragnaros' poor is against these board states, but he took Ysera instead. So now I'm almost certain that OmegaZero is going to be looking at Hex this turn and seeing if that's good enough. But this is a tough spot. OmegaZero's got to really figure out how exactly he's going to win this game, because there are so many turns away from lethal right now.
I mean, this is a start. He's going to present a board that's actually tough to deal with, and maybe Sam's going to regret not taking the Chill Maw, because if he plays a Ysera now, it's actually just challenged by damage on board.
I have to say that not taking the Chill Maw, I think, was a blunder in this spot, because now suddenly he's under massive threat, and he doesn't have any way to handle this. The Chill Maw would have effectively provided him a way to get back into this. Now, granted, OmegaZero would have drawn Hex and punished him for that, but there was no way to avoid that situation, and the Ragnaros, I think, was just worse than Chill Maw would have been. He could have wiped the board sometimes in that spot. The timely draw from OmegaZero, though, you said it yourself, one single draw could have changed the landscape of last year's World Championships. OmegaZero's looking like he might get away with this game.
Still going to be tough, as SamuelTsao has a lot of resources. He just has to figure out the best way to make use of all of these big cards that he has in his hand. He's only got 10 mana per turn when he wishes he had 30.
Quickly.
Ash Community would be pretty good if you got 30 mana.
Just plays Nefarian, picks up Bloodlust and Rockbiter weapon, which, to be honest, just aren't that great.
Nefarian's attack right now is isolated to a Stoneclaw Totem. I think OmegaZero makes the push here.
I mean, that's what Rockbiter weapon's for.
This is a 2-turn lethal that he has set up in the face of no disruption.
He knows the AoE is gone. Dragonfire Potion's been used. Holy Nova's been used. Blackwing Corruptor's been used. There's not much left.
Pain. So some ways to start swinging back. And SamuelTsao's held on to these 2 Twilight Guardians for a long time. I'm curious if it was to get OmegaZero to commit to a turn like this, and then try to swing the board back around and have the 2 Twilight Guardians play the recovery mechanism.
I must consider.
He knows there's no Bloodlust in OmegaZero's deck.
So we can Shadowword Pain, Rockbiter weapon, down the Flametongue Totem, kill off the 7/7, and play a Twilight Guardian.
That's a big turn.
That'll probably be the safest way for him to try to stabilize. He could even fit in a hero power if that's going to be the case, to bring himself back up to 10, which 10 health with not that much power being presented on the board is actually a pretty good amount.
Wow.
And now OmegaZero needs a really impactful draw. It actually just heals Nefarian.
That doesn't really play around anything. Maelstrom Portal would deal 3 damage right now. Lightning Storm deals enough damage. OmegaZero has some really strong draws left. Azure Drake is definitely one of them.
Lightning Bolt gets through this Twilight Guardian.
I'm looking at Lightning Bolt, Jade Lightning, and Lightning Storm.
Let's see what the
and
draw's
even
gonna
Maelstrom
be.
Portal being big.
Jade Spirit actually presents
still
a pretty big
as well. But OmegaZero, I think, is likely to draw a card here before he makes this decision.
Yeah.
Another Jade Spirit is pretty big. This is a lot of damage that OmegaZero is going to threaten here. And SamuelTsao's got next to nothing left that's impacting the board immediately. This is a problem for SamuelTsao. How did this game get to this position?
So if his Twilight Guardian had stayed on the board, no, he wouldn't have even had lethal then. I was thinking maybe he saw Bloodlust and was like, maybe I should try and go for it, but this game completely changed from what we saw 5 turns ago. I thought this game was going to be hard for SamuelTsao to lose, but just a couple micro decisions.
No.
And a couple key draws for Omega.
There's a big Twilight Drake that's coming up.
You wish to live forever. You wish to live forever.
Can SamuelTsao just go face?
Quickly.
SamuelTsao just handed that Twilight Guardian a basket and filled it full of eggs.
I think he's got a trade here. Oh my gosh, this is tough. With Bloodlust in hand, I think you definitely take the trade. He's gonna go face.
Whoa!
And he says OmegaZero, handle it and handle it now. 3 spell power. Does OmegaZero have enough damage to push through this? That looks like it to me. That's 3 from the Maelstrom Portal, 9 on board, and then 8 from the attack on Jade Golem. OmegaZero is gonna win this game.
Wow. Wow. I can't believe this, Admirable. I can't believe it.
Patient play from OmegaZero at every step of the way, taking the right trades, pushing damage at the right time. SamuelTsao at the very end doesn't take the trade on the 8/8 Jade Golem. Instead, he set up for lethal, but with Bloodlust in hand, he's got maybe some extra turns to get the damage done. There's so much different stuff that could happen to that one.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at highlight one of the turns that we had in this game from that past game.
Yeah, so freeze the board right after this discovery comes up. So take a look at now where this Chill Maw could come into hand. And when you see OmegaZero's board afterwards, there's actually no way he gets through this with just what he has currently in play. He'd have to draw Hex in this one. So if we go ahead and roll through it, SamuelTsao decides Ysera is the pick here. The way this game has been panning out, if SamuelTsao just continues to restrict the board, he's almost certainly got it in the bag. This Ysera never got played over the course of this game. Chillmaw could have forced the Hex, then maybe Ragnaros could have had to clean up on the board. Instead, he chose Ysera, went with Ragnaros this turn. It didn't pay off, and the Hex on the Ragnaros was simply enough to turn around. Even if he took the Chillmaw there, played the Ragnaros first, and then had the Chillmaw to follow up afterwards, he'd have been able to stabilize, I think. But that Ysera...
That was a greedy choice.
Did nothing.
Yeah. Still in his hand at the end of the game as OmegaZero dealt the final points of damage. I felt like there was a lot of small decisions in that game that SamuelTsao made that changed the course. The heal onto his Nefarian instead of his face. And then the attack to face instead of the attack into the 8/8 Jade. I mean, those things ended up being pretty huge because every point of damage matters. He had enough cards to sit there and try and fight the board battle, heal up every turn, force OmegaZero to have perfect draws for the rest of the game. I don't even think Maelstrom Portal was the perfect draw. Lightning Storm would have done it in that situation. Second Hex would have done it in that situation. There was actually a lot of things that he could have drawn to get himself out.
Yeah, as we roll into this game, no, there is no patches. That is correct. There is a Pirate that hit the board. It's not in OmegaZero's hand. It's not in his deck. He's not running patches in his build. He's running a very straightforward Miracle Rogue build. 2 copies of everything in his deck except for Leroy Jenkins, Burgley Bully, Edwin Van Cleef, and Blood Mage Thalnos. Outside of that, it is straightforward questing adventurer, Miracle Rogue. In this matchup, he's got to take the early game in some fashion, one way or another. The second step he has to accomplish is he's got to find a way to draw cards and then get a damage source protected. It's a little bit of a problem at times because SamuelTsao has such health-efficient minions. It's not the easiest way for OmegaZero to chew through this stuff. So he's got some good tools right now, but he's missing a piece or two if he wants to get this job done.
So he goes with Bran here over the Blackwing Technician. Doesn't put as much power on the board, but it threatens a few things. Notably, 2-drop plus 1-drop, which would be Nether Spud Historian for 2 draws, plus a 2/5 Twilight Whelp instead of a 2/3 Twilight Whelp. And it also threatens a Blackwing Technician that all of a sudden is a 4/6 instead of a 3/5. And OmegaZero is going to have to use a lot of resources if he wants to answer this brand. And in a way, it's not even answering it fully because he would have to just sap it or Shadow Fiend prep sap it. And just sapping it, you didn't have a way to deal with it that turn. Probably just replay it.
Yeah. Well, if the Shadow Fiend's on board, that does threaten it at least.
Yeah. So
at that point.
That's a lot of resources. After this turn, if he goes with that play, he'd be left with just a Conceal and a Cold Blood. I think he realizes this and says, you know what? I'm getting in some damage.
Well, this is a protected damage source right now. If you look at SamuelTsao's priest list, Shadow Word Death is the only thing in his deck that will kill this right now. It's already gotten value, and now there's nothing there. So now OmegaZero knows that unless SamuelTsao 4-went playing Shadow Word Death here, that the next way for him to kill it is Holy Nova, Blackwing Corruptor. Twilight Guardian can get pushed through by the 5/1 plus OmegaZero's Dagger here. So this is very close to an all-in play from OmegaZero. He is looking to end the game now as quickly as possible.
His next turn is going to tell us a lot because SamuelTsao is a 1/3 on board, which that Swashbuckler is challenged by. So OmegaZero, if he goes for something like Shadow Fiend Conceal, this game just got real. And with Azure Drake picked up, I actually think that may not be a terrible choice.
That's exactly what it's going to do. Azure Drake was one of his best draws at the moment.
And Shadow Fiend kind of generating a coin here as well, because his next draw, at least his next draw, is going to be reduced. And also Azure Drake is going to draw him a card as well, so actually draws him 2 coins.
Yeah, no, not really much play for SamuelTsao here. It's play the taunt and go ahead.
5 mana Gadazan Auctioneer.
Oh my gosh.
Does that bring me back?
Oh my goodness. OmegaZero's next turn is nuts. Those are perfect draws. I don't think that he could have asked for 2 better draws in this spot.
No. Especially reduced from the Shadow Fiend.
Wow, this is really surprising here. So OmegaZero wants to take a trade here to prevent Blackwing Corruptor from getting full value.
Both of these minions are pretty threatening. Forcing SamuelTsao, if he has Blackwing Corruptor, to make the choice between the 2.
Okay, I like it. If he attacks the 1/3 there, he was thinking about attacking the 1/3 to make the trades awkward as well for SamuelTsao, but Holy Nova then would have swept up his board.
Yeah.
In that spot. So.
But this Gadazan Auctioneer plus Eviscerate will deal with the Blackwing Technician, and then he's going to have 2 4/4s on board, which are going to be really hard to answer. One of those 4/4s draws a card every time he plays a spell.
I got the best deals anywhere.
He's going to just gauge to see if he can pick up another spell first. He knows that there's not really a way besides Dragonfire Potion that's going to punish it, and he does pick up another Eviscerate.
This is very wisely sequenced here for OmegaZero to not use the preparation first. He's got 2 copies of Fan of Knives. He's got the second copy of a 2-cost Eviscerate. Those are the only spells that were playable that would have put him in a position like that.
He's down to 12, and Sam has no way to deal with either of these minions.
No Dragonfire Potion. SamuelTsao is going to lose this game.
He might even just die next turn. 7 mana.
There's 1 Cold Blood
That's
left
enough.
and 1 Leroy in terms of from-hand damage from OmegaZero at this point.
Swashbuckler can pick up,
but he's set up to draw
something.
a ton of cards.
Could also just build up a big questing, hide it behind a conceal, and then make it out of reach of Dragonfire Potion. A 6/6 in a single turn is definitely not unreasonable. So SamuelTsao is just going to load up the board and say, I hope that you don't have enough.
Well, that's almost enough.
He needs a single point of damage. It's actually going to be hard because he won't be able to fit in a dagger up, actually. But now, whatever damage he deals is going to be that much more impactful now that he's picked up Leroy Jenkins.
So he's gonna play for Questing Adventurer getting outside the range of Dragonfire Potion and just being too big for SamuelTsao to handle at this point. Swashbuckler could have provided some small things to get the job done, but OmegaZero much more interested in keeping his board safer on this. And why is he using the... Is that an Auctioneer that's attacking rather than the Azure Drake? Because he's got a Conceal in hand. And I'd really like to see him protected from Holy Nova and the like.
I would too.
Yeah, yeah. That was a little curious. I was going to give you a really funny look if that Auctioneer attacks. What? Is he trying to bait? Oh, he's trying to bait SamuelTsao into Holy Nova, isn't he? Nah, that's really smart.
Well, I think if he Holy Novas, he's
dead. So he wants
dead
a Holy
anyway.
Nova here. So he's like, yeah, here, take it.
If he
That's
Dragonfire
clever.
Potions, he's not dead on the board, so maybe he just wants the higher health minion. I mean, there's a few reasons for it, but really, in the end, it doesn't matter. Because I just don't see a way out for SamuelTsao, and OmegaZero will tie up this series. And despite a crazy start in the match from SamuelTsao going up 3-0, we're going to game number 7, OmegaZero. Can he complete the reverse sweep?
This is just unreal. OmegaZero is doing to SamuelTsao what Pavel did to OmegaZero.
He learned. He adapted.
And then he adapted again.
That's a Tyrannosaurus joke, if you didn't get it.
This is just crazy that he's brought it to this point. And we were talking about Tempo Mage earlier, how he was the player in this metagame that first started to build the successful versions of it, the ones that later were adopted in the Western scene.
Yeah, we talked a lot with him earlier this week about Tempo Mage because he is one of the players that brought Tempo Mage back, sort of. Tempo Mage was not a deck that was played in December and January in the Mean Streets of Gadarzan meta. But OmegaZero is one of the players that just kept bringing it to tournaments, and he's had a lot of success with it. And we talked to him about it, and he said he loves how flexible Tempo Mage is. You can build it in a way where you're just trying to get on the board quick and end the game quick. If you play a lot of those early game minions, you top out at like Firelands Portal, and that's it. You try and burn your opponent down. Or you can play it in a way like he built it this time around, where you have a lot of slower stuff. He has Archmage at Tinnitus, he has a Flame Strike, he has Ragnaros the Fire Lord, and he has a Yogg-Saron. So he can take it a little bit later than Tempo Mage is normally used to. And OmegaZero, that's one of the things he likes about the deck, is that you can build it to tailor to a certain meta and to a certain situation.
And in this position, it looks like it's tailored really well for this matchup. You mentioned it with Archmage and Tinnitus and Ragnaros. Those are 2 heavy hitters if it goes to a grindy game. But he's also got 2 Azure Drakes and 2 Burgly Bullies. Those are big drops versus Dragon Priest. Burgly Bully is not an easy minion for SamuelTsao to kill in this matchup.
No. He basically has to have the board in order to kill it. I mean, probably not going to give too many coins because Dragon Priest just doesn't run many spells in general. But it's just that 4/6 body that becomes problematic.
The other thing to consider, too, here, though, is that SamuelTsao's deck in general is going to operate fairly well versus OmegaZero. He's got a lot of health-efficient minions that keep pressure on the board, trying to eliminate minions at every step of the way. And almost all of OmegaZero's removal in some way or another, is limited by the amount of damage it deals. It's not like a Warlock deck where they have Blast Crystal Potions and Siphon Souls. It's got Frost Bolts and Fire Bolts. Or Frost Bolts and Fireballs, rather. So every single time he's able to get ahead with a minion, that's a really important facet for OmegaZero because that will allow him to trade his way up the curve.
And SamuelTsao misses a 2-drop.
And that's a bad thing for him.
His turn 2 play is pass.
Curious if OmegaZero is going to use a burn spell here and start pushing damage, or if he's just going to take his trade, because this particular turn for OmegaZero is going to spell out his game plan for quite a while. If he expends that Frostbolt, he's committing to damage. If he doesn't spend that Frostbolt, maybe he gets more value out of the Mana Worm in terms of actual card economy. That's an interesting play that he made very quickly.
My work is paramount. Leave me alone.
I mean, bringing that Mana Worm up to that 4 attack mark, he saw that there was no Shadowward Pain, but maybe hitching around that. He knows that it's going to get another attack in, at least because the second Mirror Image token is still on the board. But this is a little bit weird. He might have to just trade into the Blackwing Technician with a ping here, because if he doesn't kill it now, he might not find another opportunity to.
I think that's right.
Well, he can push damage because he knows that if SamuelTsao were to heal it, he doesn't have a 2-drop, he'd be able to trade into a next turn anyway. So this is just correct, because anything that's played on turn 4, he'd be able to kill with Fireball anyway, and then push damage if he so chooses. That's 4 damage to the face that he wouldn't have had otherwise.
Cabal Talon Priest looked really interesting there as well. It's a curious turn. But he squeezed 4 more damage out of this Mana Worm. Kudos to OmegaZero. That was just a good play.
Yeah, but SamuelTsao, despite missing turn 2, he is... Actually, he is. There's no other dragon in the hand. He can't activate Blackwing, or, sorry, Draconid Operative.
That's one of the reasons I was curious if Cabal Talon Priest was better in that situation. It would have given him a 3/7 Technician plus the 3/4 in play. So the Fireball isn't operating well versus either of them, and he's still safe from Forgotten Torch in that spot.
And OmegaZero does have a pretty clean way to answer this brand. Now, he doesn't get any development out of it.
But that's not what he's looking for right now either. He's looking to just scale into this Yogg-Saron, be slightly behind on board, and have that provide so much value that it turns the game around. I mean, this is like the common game plan we saw from Tempo Mage before this card was changed.
Scale into Yogg-Saron. How long has it been since we've heard that phrase used? Oh, wait, it happened earlier in Doc Pone's match. How long before that has it been since we heard that term used? So these options, Arcane Intellect or Flame Strike were the ones that stood out to me. Flame Strike is going to help him answer many of the minions in OmegaZero's list. Not the big stuff, but Azure gets swept up, Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mana Worms, pretty much all the minions left remaining in his deck besides Archmage Antonitis, Burgly Blues, and Ragnaros. So just trying to find support for the minions that he already has.
That's not a good one. And that's actually one of the only minions in OmegaZero's deck that won't benefit him whatsoever in this spot. He's got a single copy of Babbling Book. Every other minion outside of Barnes has some sort of effect attached to it.
He could have picked up Ragnaros the Firelord. Archmage Antonitis would have allowed him to get another Fireball because he has Arcane Missiles in his hand. Deathwing could be used as an insurance policy here for Yogg-Saron.
I mean, SamuelTsao knows Yogg-Saron's in the deck. So the question is, when does that actually come into play in this matchup? Is that something SamuelTsao can afford to fear? He currently has 2 answers to it, with Flame Strike and with Shadow Word Death. So I think he's in the business of fighting for the board a little bit harder, trying to make OmegaZero's job that much tougher in the coming turns.
And it really is going to be tough because this is... He kept the board clean for as long as he could, but this is starting to get scary. Picks a Flame Waker, which can help him fight back, but...
It's only 7 missiles.
Yeah.
With Arcane Intellect and Arcane Missiles.
This is one of the reasons why Dragon Priest is really effective against Tempo Mage, is because all of these missile effects don't do well against a board full of high health minions. And he's going to go for it anyway, just to try and clear some of this off the board, set up for a better Firelands portal, get more spells out of his hand, so that way if he has to use Yogg-Saron right on turn 10, he's got more in the bank to do it with.
SamuelTsau's hand is sick.
It's really good.
I didn't talk much about how the cards for SamuelTsao line up really well in this matchup. Also, now that's a good draw for OmegaZero.
Yeah,
he needed something to get on board.
For him, it's about just trying to kill as much stuff as possible.
Wow, that's a huge draw, actually, because now this unlocks Firelands Portal and Frostbolt for OmegaZero afterwards, and SamuelTsao starting to run out of minions. His deck doesn't have a bunch of burn in it like OmegaZero's deck does, so OmegaZero not really under threat of lethal if he can just remove anything on board. That Roaring Torch may have completely changed the game.
Does this go back to the choice from SamuelTsao to choose Flame Strike over Arcane Intellect?
It might, because card draw is an important facet.
How often are you going to be able to get by at a Flame Strike? There's not actually that many minions in the deck from OmegaZero. It's a lot of spells. The majority of the deck is spells.
And here we'll get a glimpse into whether or not OmegaZero is more concerned with power on board or more concerned with card draw from SamuelTsao.
Azure Drake plus Frostbolt answers the Blackwing Corruptor, but Firelands Portal also does the same thing while potentially making a stronger minion. And a 5/5 is a stronger minion, does present a target for Shadow or Death, but that might be okay for OmegaZero because he does still have very important minions left in his deck that are above that 5 spell threshold, including Archmage Antonidas and Ragnaros the Fire Lord.
And it looks like SamuelTsao is going to make a push this turn. With that Twilight Guardian and the Blackwing Corruptor, he's got a lot of damage. He saw the Flame Strike was in deck. He's not going to use Shadow Word Death. He wants to save that for the potential Yogg-Saron. So he's setting up the board to be devastating against OmegaZero. So how much time does OmegaZero have? This is a 10-spell Yogg-Saron currently. Can he afford to wait and make it bigger? He's going for it now.
He needs some big stuff. That's not bad, Admirable. That's not bad.
Is some big stuff. That was disgusting. Holy smokes. He just got an effigy. He got an ice block. He drew multiple cards, and he killed 2 of SamuelTsao's minions. He's got a 10-cost minion that will be replaced the next time that it dies, and he picked up a value card when he cast a spell because of Lock and Load.
Wow. This game just got a lot more interesting.
It's like fate is just on OmegaZero's side right now. He was down 3 games to 0. Now I think he's favored on match point.
It's still going to be tough because SamuelTsao does still have a lot of value. And he's really going to think about this choice, but I think Blackwing Corruptor, or sorry, Draconid Operative.
He can't kill the Yogg-Saron. OmegaZero gets another 10-drop in that situation.
Well, he's also just got to worry about like what those actually are. Like he has no idea what those secrets are. They could be Spellbender, it could be Counterspell, Ice Barrier, Ice Block, Mirror. Well, it can't be Mirror Entity anymore, but that's about it. That's the only thing he can rule out. And these minions may not be the best. He can take Arcane Blast to try and like get a cheap spell to play around Counterspell or Spellbinder. But Blood Mage Thalnos is going to be the pickup. Maybe let him get further into the deck, but he's just going to leave up. Not even attack.
Spearing Vaporize from the attack. He wants to have the Netherspite Historian get the job done. OmegaZero is going to win this game, I think. His hand is so good after the Yogs are on.
Not only did he generate value from his deck, he also picked up a ball of spiders, which is just 3 web spinners and then 3 beasts out of nowhere. And now he's taking control. He's still worried about what this secret could be.
So SamuelTsao does have an interesting way to play around the secret at this point with Shadow Word Pain. Toss that into the Mana Worm, sees the good news that Effigy goes off, and then plays afterwards.
What if it's Spellbinder?
But if he does something like attack and then Holy Nova, that's bad news.
Well, this eliminates 2 possibilities. It eliminates Vaporize and Ice Barrier. So now it's much less.
Yeah, smart sequencing there from SamuelTsao.
Yeah. And Flame Strike will allow him to sort of reset everything, but again, he's running low on minions.
And Burgly Bully looks pretty darn sick here.
Yes, it does. Is that an Arcane
Now, here's
Intellect?
the thing. I'm curious if OmegaZero even wants to draw any more cards. Down to 8 in his deck, Fatigue is still a very real possibility in this matchup. There is no Emperor Thaurissan in his deck, so there's not a chance he's getting a gigantic Archmage Antonidas turn. It's fairly honest. But if he's drawing, that means he feels like he's got enough stuff to end the game before it gets to that point.
And I think he does. With Archmage Antonidas and a few cheap spells, plus Aragnos the Fire Lord to back it up, there's a limited amount of removal left in the deck for SamSao. And he doesn't have a way to deal with this Burgly Bully outside of spell usage, which will give a coin, which is another Fireball from Archmage Antonidas. So OmegaZero knows that Sam is on a clock. 2 Shadow Word Deaths should, in theory, line up with Archmage Antonidas and Ragnaros, but how much damage are they going to deal before they die?
The problem is the Burgly Bully. So OmegaZero is going to be able to play Ragnaros the Fire Lord and put SamuelTsao to a test where he's got to kill it first. And every single time that SamuelTsao has to kill something with a spell, that means another Fireball from Archmage Antonidas is going to show up.
Is this going to be a Blood Mage Thanos heal and pass? Is that going to be the turn?
What can he do? His cards don't do anything. They're bad right now, TJ.
I mean, Bookworm at least presents something onto the board. There's not that many low-cost minions that he's going to kill. I think the only thing that Bookworm can hit is Blood Mage Thanos and Sorcerer's Apprentice. I guess Flame Waker. So maybe that's why. But he has Shadow Word Pain, so I think he needs to get this body on the board because he needs to start fighting back. Another cheap spell. And it's time to go.
Yeah, 3 Fireballs, I think, is the threshold here for OmegaZero.
And he does have a chance to clear the board. But that is such a low priority for him. He just kind of cares about the Fireballs.
That might just even be better for him.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Just damage to the face. And now Holy Nova plus a Shadow Word Death is going to clear things up, but will he have enough damage at that point? Will he have enough minions to start staving things off? There's still some natural damage left in the deck for OmegaZero as well, including Flame Waker, with a lot of these spells. Ball of Spires is still available. It does take a lot of sort of board initiative to be able to get that online. I mean, this is still a game. Maybe OmegaZero can even just kill all the minions that SamuelTsao plays for the rest of the game and win through the value from Ball of Spiders.
Well, the problem with that is the 5 cards that he's got left in his deck. So he's got 5 turns to win before Fatigue sets it.
Yeah.
So the Ice Block is largely irrelevant in that instance. Anytime SamuelTsao can pop the Ice Block, it'll mean that OmegaZero is often losing to Fatigue in that spot anyway.
Burgly Bully.
And then he can coin the Ball of Spiders.
Nope, it's Ragnaros. I don't know about that one.
Well, yeah, I'm not. Honestly, I'm not sure about the sequence in general because I feel like he could have forced spells from SamuelTsao and just had more coins on the follow-up for Archmage Antonidas. But he has sequenced this very aggressively, looking to close the game. Now suddenly it looks like SamuelTsao, he may not be able to actually take control, but he can force a lot of the resources that OmegaZero invested into, and that means there's 4 cards left in OmegaZero's deck to get the job done.
I mean, let's take a step back and look at the pan out here. SamuelTsao really doesn't have resources to play around Flame Strike effectively, which he knows is still a card, and he knows that it's very likely at this stage that he has it in his hand. Because he only has 4 cards left. There's only going to be 3 left in his deck after this game is done, and he knows that that is a card that's in OmegaZero's deck. And all of the minions in his hand right now are vulnerable to Flame Strike. It's all under 4 health. Blackwood Technician is 5 with the dragon, but then you're at 10 mana, so a ping is always a possibility. So, I mean, he's going to try and load up here, and I think he's got to play this one a little bit safe. 2 minions is going to be the threshold.
This is the first time we've seen SamuelTsao do anything but sit up straight.
Yeah.
Now he's starting to feel the pressure of the situation. I mean, I imagine that's about the most emotion he's going to show whatsoever.
Yeah.
They're both in the exact same position. Well, not anymore, but...
This is a stressful game. This is game number 7. It is only the first match of the tournament for these guys, and they're already being put in such a tough situation. This is going to be one of those matches where if you lose, you're going to watch every single game to see what you did wrong. And now Flame Strike comes out, so that's going to be the go-ahead for SamuelTsao to start loading up on the board, I feel.
Oh my. That's a good draw. That's a really good draw.
Yeah. So it's time to go.
Now, I would like to see SamuelTsao start weaving in some hero powers here as well. I mean, I'm curious if the Wormrest agent on board is actually threatening anything at this point. You know, the extra damage means something, but again, this is looking like fatigue is a real possibility to happen. And now suddenly the Burgly Bully, it's checked on board. It's been a while since I've seen that bad boy.
So bizarre of a game. It's been a while since we've seen Yogg-Saron in this instance.
Oh my. Oh my.
I mean, Bragg has some bad targets here. Is the thing.
It's a big card that OmegaZero has to respect.
I'm thinking about some of these last turns, and this game has flip-flopped on who we considered the favorite so many times. OmegaZero, after that Yogg-Saron, looked like he was in a great spot, but SamuelTsao played around the secrets well, was able to minimize the impact of the effigy, and OmegaZero had some turns where he could have, gone for the value, made some, a board, a wide board instead of, Ragnaros like he used. We look back at that Ragnaros turn. Could he have played Burgly Bully and coined out the Ball of Spiders to get those beasts online earlier? Would that have been a better setup? I mean, could he have thrown some fireballs at the minions last turn and try and save Flame Strike?
I'm left with a lot of questions.
There is a lot of different panouts from this situation, and
SamuelTsao, is he looking to pop this ice block maybe? Yeah, I like increasing the odds that he's hitting the Burgly Bully in this spot.
Armored Warhorse. Armored Warhorse.
Burgly Bully's down.
Bring in the horsies.
If I remember correctly, I think that's all the minions in OmegaZero's deck. Because the last card's Babbling Book, I believe. It's really hard to win a joust when your last card is a 1-cost minion. So probably not charging with those.
Come on, Joust.
I'm almost out of cards.
Just proclaiming it again.
Just reminding him.
This is not going to do it.
No.
OmegaZero he doesn't have the damage left to close.
he can't play Blood Mage Thalnos because that's just going to get him deeper into his deck, and he's going to go further into fatigue. I mean, at this point, he's going to try and set up a pretty wide board and say, you know what, I hope you don't hit face, but he's going to take 8. There it is again. I think that could be the only minion left for SamuelTsao. He's got a Dragonfire Potion left in the deck.
3. SamuelTsao's going to win.
Is someone injured?
If he just kills all of OmegaZero's stuff, he wins.
He could go for the heal here and try and find Dragonfire Potion, which I believe is one of the 3 cards that's left in his deck.
How did SamuelTsao win this game? This is exactly what I asked the last one.
What an insane series. Now jacking it
Give
off.
him that babbling book. Give him that babbling book.
I like how it still like gives you the choice. Like, And counterspell. I mean, not that it really mattered too much in the series because I just don't think OmegaZero would have enough damage or enough of anything really.
Wow.
Goes
4
to the face. Before. What can Babbling Book pick up?
I don't know. It's going to have to be the best babbling book of all time, though. And I'm pretty sure Pavel's got the record for that right now, so that's not going to do it. OmegaZero is going to fall in game number 7 versus SamuelTsao. There's motions to go through, but boy, let me tell you what, it's not happening.
Yeah, if these have perfect juggles, maybe he can try and isolate the 2-2 and the 3-4 so he can't push the 4 damage through. But with those, he is just dead. The mirror image gets run over, and that's it. SamuelTsao, game number 7, takes the game and takes the series. The underdog, he made it close. But at the end of it all, he comes out on top, and that is a huge confidence boost for this young Taiwanese player, taking out one of the powerhouses of China.
Wow. I mean, what an upset to be had for SamuelTsao. Such a big win. OmegaZero now down to the lower bracket. He's got to win 2 straight if he wants to keep his championships alive here. Just what an incredible set between these two. Back and forth about as much as you can imagine.
I mean, Yogg-Saron was a card that people wanted to see gone for a long time, but it brings some excitement to games, that's for sure. It's a risk to put it in your deck because it's dead for much of the game. But man, that made that series exciting. And SamuelTsao, he'll go on to face the winner of Green Sheep versus Tari, which will happen in just a few moments. But for now, let's go ahead and get a few words with our winner. It's SamuelTsao with Rachel.
Thank you guys so much. SamuelTsao, I've been watching this match. We all have for about 2.5 hours now. And one of the things that I kept remembering was that you said before HCT, before this tournament series, you have never played Conquest format before. How did you even learn?
这场比赛真的是一场很长的比赛，然后已经持续差不多有2小时30分钟了。然而我们依然记得在之前采访中你说到，你在 HCT 之前是没有接触过征服赛制的，所以说你是怎么样学习在征服赛制中比赛的？
有过那么久的时间吗？已经2个半小时。比赛的话，我就是多看看，像是就是他们举办的大赛。 然后很厉害的选手，他们带牌的策略，我就多学习这样子。
I didn't realize this is a 2-hour and 30 minutes match, and for me, I will just watch the Twitch stream for the big tournaments and to learn the skills and the deck strategy from the players.
Well, yeah, as you said too, it was a long match. How do you keep your focus for so long?
你是如何在如此长的比赛当中保持你的注意力的？
就是深呼吸，然后觉得自己快不行的时候就 pray 祷告。
Okay, first one is the deep breath, and second one is when I feel it's not so good, I will pray.
Whatever works for you, man. Congratulations on your victory. We're gonna be right back.